What do we have? A lot? Just these?
Yeah. And
Okay.
just so you're aware, these three, they want to testify together.
Okay.
So that would be fine.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good evening. Today is Tuesday, October 4th. We'd like to welcome everyone to our regular school board meeting. Let's see, we have board members in the boardroom are members Donnelly, Holloman, Jacobs, Lessons, Wilson, and Bellamy. Joining us online, is he there yet? Member Higgins is online. We also have our superintendent, Dr. Jared Bryant, as well as our executive assistant, Miss Amanda Foster. So with that, I'd like to call our meeting to order, beginning with the flag salute, followed by the land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On behalf of the Anchorage School Board, I want to take a moment to recognize and offer gratitude for the sacred ancestral lands of the Dena'ina people. We acknowledge and appreciate that our offices, facilities, and schools are on these sacred indigenous lands, and we honor the traditional care that has been given to this land throughout generations. We are grateful for the opportunity to grow, learn, work, and create educational communities on the sacred land. We extend continued respect for the many cultures, creativity, and resilience of its indigenous peoples. Chinook.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. And that brings us to our just a brief opening statement. I almost pretty much already made that, but again, welcome. We are thankful that you are here in attendance. We got a full house tonight. And look at all those faces out there. So welcome, everybody. The board thanks our students, our parents, our teachers, our staff, our school partners, and the entire community for your investment in our district. And that investment of your time, your talents, and your tax dollars. So we appreciate you being here. And that brings us to the approval of the agenda.
Madam President, I move to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
Moved in second to approve the agenda as written. Seeing no opposition. Member, yes. No, that got changed. I'm sorry. I don't know when you got your packet, but it got changed. Yeah, so it's down. Thank you. That was a change though, member Donnelly. Okay, seeing no opposition. The agenda is approved as presented. And tonight we have that moves us to item B. Do we have a military report? Hi, Colonel. Come on down. Welcome.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Colonel Eric Dunn. I'm the Mission Support Group Commander out at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, and I'll just give a quick military report tonight. First of all, just a continued thanks to the entire school district for the partnership with Jay Barrett and our military youth and just the awesome support that the schools provide to our military children. The other thing we want to highlight that we'll do periodically is our youth programs on base that support the military children. In particular tonight are 2 youth centers. So 2 Rivers Youth Center on Jay Barrett Richardson side and Kennecott Youth Center on Jay Barrett Elmendorf side. These youth centers utilize the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and 4-H curriculum. During the month of October, students are participating in the 4-H STEM Challenge, where they will learn about the incredibly complex relationship between the Earth's ocean and the global climate. And these centers serve our children from ages 9 to 18 years of age, and they're actually in walking distance of our base elementary school. So it provides a great partnership between attending the school and then having the youth center after school. And that's it for our military report tonight. Are there any questions for me?
Are there any questions for Colonel Dunn? I don't see any, so thank you very much. And we appreciate your partnership as well. Thank you. And that brings us to our SAB report, Student Advisory Board. Ms. Shaw.
So SAB, or Student Advisory Board, held their first meeting on September 13th at 8:15 a.m. There, it was mostly high schoolers and a few middle schoolers. We meet together once a month and discuss things going on in the district and within our own schools. We have our next meeting next Tuesday at 11:15 a.m., where then we will have a full SAB with all middle schoolers and high schoolers. I'm super excited, and I know outside of SAB, all high schools had successful homecomings since my freshman year of 2019. So it's super nice to see things going back to how they were before. And I know a lot of different sporting events are happening too. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Are there any questions for our student representative? Good report. Thank you again. That brings us to item C, which is our goal monitoring. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bryant, but tonight is more of a technical report, simply because we are still waiting for the data to come from the new data. STAR, is it? No. AK STAR. So Dr. Bryant.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, board and ASD community. Today, we'll begin the process of discussing board progress monitoring for the 22-23 school year. As Madam President mentioned, because Alaska recently changed its summative assessment to the AK STAR, we're still waiting on the data. So it's delayed until late October as they establish cut scores for this new assessment. So tonight, I'll be sharing the first outcome monitoring report on reading proficiency. So we'll focus on FastBridge reading proficiency snapshot data, which are administered to students 3 times a year. So we will use this same presentation at our next board meeting on October 18th. And that'll give the time for the board to process this information and to submit questions to the administration in writing on our academic and program strategies. Tonight, because you'll be seeing a lot of dense data for the very first time, really the focus of tonight is to focus on technical questions. So in other words, if you have a question about, what does this column mean, or particulars around definitions that we may be throwing around, this would be a great opportunity for us to lay that technical foundation, so that way going into the 18th, we can fully focus on our academic and programmatic strategies. So I look forward to that. I'm very excited in general to be talking about academics for the first time. Really, since I've started, it's kind of been very operations heavy, as you know, in recent months, but this is where my heart is. So I'm excited to put on my former high school math teacher on and start talking a little bit about the data. So with that said, we're going to focus on reading proficiency, and we have a lot of members in the public in the audience tonight. So let's just ground everybody on what's the big picture here. The ASD board has set a goal that the percentage of 3rd grade students proficient in reading on the state summative test, which again is now the Alaska STAR, will increase from 40% to 80% by May 2026. A very ambitious goal, but we're laser focused on getting there. So because we're still waiting on the AK STAR data from the state, tonight we're going to focus on our interim goal, 1.1, and that's to increase our K2, that's to improve our K2 reading proficiency for our students to 80% on the FastBridge by spring 2024. So These interim goals are very important because they keep the administration on track as we collect this data 3 times a year. So during those times, we can strategize and continuously improve. So looking at this slide, you'll notice immediately there's a big red box on the table. Actually, there's 3 of them. We'll talk more about the why in our next meeting about how did we get here in terms of being far below target. But I do just want to give you a high-level overview on what's on the screen to inform you as you study this data in the coming days. So the first thing you may notice would be 2 bar graphs, one that is yellow in color and the other one that is in blue. You'll notice that the yellow one is essentially where we were at the end of the 2021 school year in the spring. And then in the blue, that's our North Star. That's our target of getting to 80% proficiency on the FastBridge assessment by 2024. So for this school year, the interim target is set to 65%. That's our goal for the year of our students approaching reading proficiency. This is meant to be our stepping stone as we aspire to that 80% by 2024. So you may recall from last year in these conversations at the very bottom of the slide, you'll see a colorful legend. So you'll note that those numbers look a little differently than they did last year. And that's because this is a multi-year plan. The targets, they're raised every single year. So we're not lowering the bar. But as you can see from an initial glance at the data, this does mean that we have a steeper hill to climb as we march towards our 80% proficiency goal. So in other words, last year's interim target was 50% of students meeting the reading proficiency benchmark, and that would have been the color green. But now instead of 50% being green, you'll notice that it's now 61%. So the bar has been raised, but that means that there's that much more urgency towards meeting these goals and ensuring that our students are reading proficiently. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. You'll notice that we have this slide where it's similar data to what you saw in the previous slide, but you'll note that it's broken down by grade level. So this will be a really interesting slide for you to look at in the coming days because you can actually track progress between cohorts of students as they advance to grade level from fall of 2021-22 to this fall. So you can track how our second graders are doing since they were in first grade and we measured this data. So this is a really interesting slide that will also inform some of the questions that you'll bring to the administration going into our next board meeting. So we're excited to share more of that with you. One thing I do also want to point out about the style of this presentation is that you'll notice if you were paying close attention last year that the colors on the fall 21-22 data may look differently than you remember. And again, that's because the target has gone up from 50% to 61% proficiency. So we're looking at the data through the lens of our current target now that we're in 22-23 of being 61 to 65%. That would be green. That would be meeting the target, if not higher. But that's why the colors would be a little differently than you might remember from last year. So I'll go ahead and go on to this beast of a slide. There is a lot of great data on here, and I know that a lot of us will want to really dive into the strategies and the why and how did we get here and what are we doing, because there's a lot to be gathered from this slide. So we don't expect you to digest it right now, but the idea is just to break down what are you looking at, so that way in the coming days you can prepare questions that we would be more than happy to answer in our discussions going into next board meeting. So how this is structured is you'll notice at the very top, we're still looking at proficiency data. We're comparing last school year to this school year. And you'll notice that we break down the data by ethnic groups. In the next section right below that, right in the middle of the slide, you'll see that we break it down by special populations. I believe you might be using a different term in the past, but in any case, I believe you use the term interest groups. I use the term special populations, but essentially our English learners, our non-English learners, special education students. You can see the data broken down by there. And I do want to I want to bring your attention to the last portion of that slide where we actually lump schools together based on where they're at in terms of the targets. So if you look at the column I wish I had a little red dot or something to point at the slides, but I'll do the best that I can. But where it says below target in kind of the bottom third of the slide, you'll see that those are schools lumped together by being below target. And then we'll see how many schools are near target. And then we'll see how many schools are on or above target in the very last row. So we do that comparison from 2021-22. And then we're seeing a similar grouping of schools from 22-23. So I do want to bring to your attention that this is the only part of the slide where we're using last year's legend on the left, where you see the red, brown, and the blue, but we're using this year's target growth on the right. Again, where it's red, brown, and blue. This is the one area where we made the decision to not view it through the lens of the current target, but so you can really see a snapshot of where we were based on last year's target at 50% compared to where we are now that the target is at 61% to 65%. So that's one little nuance that I did want to bring to your attention because you may be wondering as you study this a little bit more closely next week, or rather in 2 weeks. So if we go to the next slide, the other thing that we'll start talking about when we see these slides again on the 18th is what are the next steps? So when we reconvene, we'll not only just look at the data, but we'll give you a high-level overview of what are the strategies that we're discussing now that we've seen the data of where our students are at as of this fall to get them to where they need to be by the time that we do the snapshot again in the winter. So you'll get a high-level overview of the next steps, and then we have 2 more slides that we'll walk you through. This is just one example of that. So in alignment to the board goals, the administration is working on our internal plan for how we'll get to those goals. So you'll see a high-level overview of what is the administration striving towards when it comes to goals for K through 2 reading proficiency. You'll also see some concrete strategies. You'll see the term multi-tiered systems of support. You'll see the term priority plans and instructional plans. These are some of the high-level strategies that we'll be talking about to go from where we're at right now as of the fall to where we hope to be when we do the snapshot again in the winter and then again in the spring. And then at the very bottom, you'll see our approach. You'll notice that there are arrows going in different directions. And that's because this is an ongoing process of continuous improvement. You know, one of the benefits of having access to data throughout the year is that you can reassess and you can go back to the drawing board if your interventions aren't working. So that's something that we'll provide at a high level. I'm sure you have many curiosities about some of the things that are in the works, and we're excited to share that with you. And then I believe this would be one of the last slides. Another thing that we'll share would kind of be our 5 buckets for what is the implementation plan for the district to meet our reading proficiency goals. Our strategies are kind of lumped into 5 major buckets that range from everything from curriculum to instruction to our professional learning of our staff to ongoing discussions about the data, and also our strategies around multi-tiered systems of support. And this just gives you a snapshot as to where we're at and what's still in progress. And then we'll bring in our content experts in 2 weeks to really go through. Well, tell me more about what you mean by instruction still in progress. So we're more than happy to share that as we get more into the strategy piece. And I believe that is the last slide. So we're happy to answer any sort of technical questions based on some of the terms that you saw on the slides at this point.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bryant. Questions from board members? Yes, member Lessons.
I'll save most of them for the next week or so as I send you probably a long list of them. But I think it's my understanding that FastBridge assessments involve discrete skill assessments. And I'm curious about whether there are certain skill areas. Can we disaggregate any of our data by skill area? I think that would be interesting. And
Is that your first question?
I think that's a first question.
Okay. For next week.
Yes, I guess it's a request for an additional layer of data.
Yes. Okay.
If that can be provided. Okay. And then really maybe the next question, and I'll save the rest for later, is under strategies on the last slide. I mean, we sort of established this structure over the past year. Have you adjusted any of these strategies since starting in ASD, or are these really more of a continuation?
Right now, we're definitely in a process of continuation, but I'm also in the middle of going out to all of the schools and really getting a firsthand account as to where we're at and where we want to go. So there'll be ongoing discussions, certainly as we also look at our academic services division going into next semester. So stay tuned. We got some good stuff planned.
Member Lessons, another follow-up? I mean, okay. All right. Anybody else? Yes, Member Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam President. In the same chart, graph, the implementation stages under curriculum, I've had kind of like a 3 to 4 year running question about this. I noticed where we're in the stage 2. What I'm mostly concerned is the ratio or the percentage of our classrooms that are actually utilizing the National Geographic Reach for Reading curriculum. And what are the data points that consistent with that are going to drive us, or where are we at now, and what's going to equal going to stage 3 there?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So we'll definitely be prepared to talk about why we're using this current curriculum, where we're at in terms of any sort of potential new adoptions, and why this was chosen and is continuing to be used this year. So that's a great question for next week.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you guys are off to a good start with the questions. Member Lessons?
All right. If I can ask one more.
You can.
We've received as a board some pretty direct emails with respect to the importance of the science of reading. And I think you have a lot of teachers who really care deeply about doing it well and doing it right. The question that Member Donnelly asked about implementation, I think, is an important one. But I think that there is a question that should be asked before that, and that is, to what extent is our curriculum materials optimal, the best? And I say that because one of the messages that we received suggested that, and I looked into it, that earlier in this year, but in FY22, Massachusetts explicitly stated that Cengage Reach for Reading, quote, does not meet expectations for quality, and was one of a half dozen curricular programs that was itemized in a grant program in their state for replacement. And I guess I want us to have this conversation is Cengage Reach for Reading the best package that we can offer our youngest learners?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we will definitely be prepared to address these concerns, as I've also been exposed to similar questions.
Okay. You. Member Higgins.
Thank you. I guess mine is, I know we've done data in the past with all the reading and math and all that, but we had it broken out by how well they're advancing a full academic year every year, the different kids and by schools and all that. Are we gonna connect that in with this as far as some sort of goal? And does that tie in? Is that a key component to trying to get the proficiency up?
If I understand your question through the president, Member Higgins, are you curious about the ways in which we'll incorporate the math into our big picture as it relates to our board progress?
Actually, one time we looked at how well they're advancing a full year each year in different schools, and one of the things we saw in 3rd grade was the curriculum was the factor that nobody was advancing that good. This was about 8-9 years ago. But I'm just curious. I'm always been an advocate for the issue of every child should advance academically a full year. Are we monitoring that? Is that something that can be provided as well?
Okay. Dr. Stuck, do you have historical context on that?
I do, Dr. Bryant. So to answer your question, we do detailed studies on the growth rates, and that's what you're referring to. So, when someone is considered proficient, it means they made it over the bar. So Alaska Star is currently setting cut scores or rates for where a student would perform to be called proficient. So if they make it over that cut score, they're proficient. What Member Higgins is referring to is the growth rate data. So where a student starts in the fall, how fast do they grow compared to their peers between fall and spring? And so to answer your question, yes, we will be collecting that. We have this fall's Fast Bridge, and we'll have map data that will have fall to spring growth rates. And so we could have schools, and we do, who are still well below proficient, but are growing by leaps and bounds between fall and spring. So we have to look at both measures, whether or not what percentage of students are already over the bar and proficient, and which ones are actually growing. So you could have students that are proficient, but not growing, and we don't want that either. So yes, we will be looking at both factors.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the technical report? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Bryant. Board members, if you will continue to review and send your questions for our more in-depth conversation next week. Not next week, the week after, next meeting. And that brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. So again, welcome. This is our first part of the evening where we allow members to provide public comment. We have set aside 1 hour time slot at the beginning of the meeting. Any public comment in excess of that hour will take place at the end of the meeting. And you can see that's near the very bottom of the agenda. During public comment, board members will not answer questions or engage in discussion with members of the public. This is the public's time to speak and the board's time to listen. The school board welcomes the public to observe and contribute to our meetings through their comments. However, to be productive, our meetings must be structured and civil. ASD conducts meetings under Robert's Rules of Order. When you entered the boardroom near the door, you would have been able to pick up a blue and white sheet that pretty much shows, gives you an overview of how we, of the expectations of when we're all together here in the boardroom. There will be a 30, each person will have 3 minutes to speak. In the middle, at the end of, I think the last 30 seconds, you will hear a little bitty chime, and that is, you have 30 seconds. That basically means you have 30 seconds left to speak. So with that, it is my hope that we will all have the respect and courtesy to listen to each other and hear each other. With that, we are ready to begin our public comment. And as always, first on our agenda, we have our students. And we have 3 students who want to come up together. We might need another chair if there's only 2 up there. So Zoe Parrish, Audrey Bowman, and Kepler Bowman, if you'll come forward, please. Oh, we got 4? Okay. And who am I missing? What's your name? Say again, baby. Okay. So what I'd like for you guys to do is go on, have a seat. We can get you another chair. You'll have to share the mic. Okay, but tell us your name before you speak, since there's 4 of you.
I'm Zoe Parrish.
Welcome, Zoe. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Hola, mi nombre es Zoe Parrish y yo estoy en un 5º grado inmersión de español estudiante y yo va a Government Hill Elementary. Hello, my name is Zoe Parrish. I am a 5th grade Spanish immersion student and go to Government Hill Elementary. I have had a great experience with Government Hill and love the teachers, friends, and volunteers. I love school because I am challenged with social studies, science, and writing in Spanish. It makes everything so exciting because it's different than my at-home language, which makes it more challenging. Last month was Hispanic Heritage Month, and at my school, we learned about all kinds of cultures that speak Spanish, like Colombia, Argentina, Panama, Peru, Mexico, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. I think that studying Spanish in an immersion environment will make me a well-rounded person and give me more opportunities for a career. I know that you're in the difficult position to cut funds for our schools, but I ask you, please don't deprive other kids of learning a new language.
Thank you, Zoe. And Audrey?
こんにちは。私の名前はオードリー・ボーマン。私は日本語イマージョンプログラムに8年生に宮津中学に行きます。Hello, my name is Audrey Bowman. I'm in the Japanese immersion program in 8th grade going to Mears Middle School. I've been in the program for 9 years, starting in kindergarten at Sand Lake Elementary. It has been a really fun experience. I would not have this skill if it weren't for all my teachers through the years. I think everyone should have the opportunity to try out a new language. Say I want to go to Japan, but I don't know the Japanese language. I would have to learn it, but if the Japanese program was gone, I wouldn't be able to. Neither would other people. One of the many reasons why I'm fluent in Japanese is because of the immersion teachers I've had through the years. Over 20 people that I care about would lose their job, so please don't shut it down. I have grown up with this language and I have fallen in love with it.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Next, we have Kepler.
こんにちは。私の名前はケプラー・ボーマンです。私は宮津中学校で8年生です。Hello, my name is Kepler Bowman, and I'm an 8th grader at Mears Middle School. I'm in the Japanese program, and this is my 9th year doing it. Japanese is an excellent tool to have when applying for jobs and colleges. Being in the program allows me to travel with my school, translate, write in Japanese, and speak fluently. Japanese is a pretty special talent, considering only about 6.7% know how to speak Japanese in Alaska. If my family had taken me out of Japanese, I would have been homeschooled at my gymnastics program. My family has given up things for me to be in this program. We have opened our house so interns from across the world can visit and socialize with people we happen to speak Japanese with. If the school board does remove the program, things won't be the same. The immersion program means a lot to me. I have grown up with it. Ever since kindergarten, I have fallen in love with learning new kanjis, words, and traditions. I would hate to see my favorite challenge get removed from school.
Thank you. And introduce yourself, please.
Zoe Hodis.
Zoe Hodis. Welcome, Zoe. 3 minutes.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Зои Ходис, и я студент в 6 классе. Я делаю русский программу в Tübingen. Hello, my name is Zoe Hodis, and I'm a 6th grader in the Russian immersion program at Tübingen Elementary. I've been in the program since kindergarten, and it has been a very good experience for me. I've made many friends along the way, and I love all the teachers. They're welcoming, and I have learned a lot from them. It's also a good solution for students that only speak Russian. For example, a classmate of mine is from Ukraine and only speaks Russian. She's 11, so she needs an education. The only way for her to get one is to be in the Russian immersion program. An investment in immersion programs is an investment in our community. Anchorage is one of the most diverse populations in the world. Immersion programs allow us to communicate with others from different backgrounds. The support of language education conveys that we respect people from all walks of life.
And thank you. Thank you very much. Thank all of you very much. Right. And next, I'd like to call Claudia Zeman. Claudia. Hi, Claudia. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Claudia Zeman. I'm a 5th grader at Government Hill Elementary School, and I am in the Spanish immersion program. And I am here tonight to tell you why we need to keep the immersion programs. Government Hill is important to me because it's like a second home, and I feel like I'm part of a family there. Every day, the teachers make sure I am learning as much as I can, and they make sure I have fun. And I have made some of the best friends a kid could ask for. Learning Spanish is important to me because it helps me communicate with my family. Mi abuela, my grandmother, is from Argentina, and my dad was the first one in my entire family born in America. His first language was Spanish. He learned English when he started elementary school in Anchorage. Spanish has allowed me to communicate with people from all around the world. I really enjoy speaking Spanish with the people I met when I was in Mexico. They were always surprised and really happy when a kid from Alaska spoke their language. If you get rid of the immersion program, I'm worried about what will happen to my teachers because it means they will lose their jobs and my school will close. It makes me sad for them and their families, and I can't imagine not seeing them every day at Government Hill. Thank you for your time tonight, and I hope that you will keep the immersion programs alive for the kids in Anchorage.
Thank you, Claudia. Next, we have Shandon Wendell. Welcome, Shandon. Shandon, did I say it right? Shanding. Okay, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity for me to speak. I'm Shandine Suella Wendell, and I'm a senior at Chinook High School. I'm Yupik, and my family is from Bethel. It is important for me to recognize that we live on Dena'ina lands. Chinook High School is situated is the closest to the Aklutna tribe compared to all the other high schools in ASD. Students there don't know that about 7 miles away, there was a boarding school for Native children. Residents of the area don't know the history of what happened in their community. In recent times across America, mass grave sites have been found in similar institutions. The motto of these schools was, "Kill the Indian, save the man." I bring this up because Native Americans have a terrible history with schools. And this holds true in Alaska. Native American students are about 3 times more likely to drop out of high school compared to any other ethnicities in the Anchorage School District. Land acknowledgements will help remind non-Native people that we are still here. They also help Native students to be proud of their heritage. The more recognized students feel in the classroom, the more they want to stay in school. I will repeat this again. Native American students are 3 times more likely to drop out of this high school in the Anchorage School District. It is in the best interest of the Anchorage School District to have land acknowledgements. Please keep my testimony in mind. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I think we have one more student, last name Cheney. Can you tell me and you can help me with your Paxton. Okay. Welcome, Paxton. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Paxton Cheney. I'm a 5th grader. I'm a 5th grade student in the immersion program at Government Hill Elementary. I think we should save the immersion program because it offers kids a chance to learn a different language. I'm Mexican and it helps me communicate in Spanish with my family. And because of the Spanish immersion program, I am bilingual. And since I'm bilingual, that could give me more options for a career. I can also make friends that I can talk to in a different language. It also shows us why it's important to learn about culture. And I learned it's important to learn about culture because it shows us where we came from, what the past was like. It helps us learn about our ancestors and traditions. My sisters in 1st and 3rd grade, and I would like to go to Romick and West to finish our Spanish immersion education. When we graduate from West, we will receive the seal of biliteracy. The seal of biliteracy will help us stand out on college applications. Most of all, we love our school and would be very sad to have immersion programs. And please don't cut them. Thank you. Gracias por escucharme y buenas tardes.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our student testimony. The applause was well deserved. Thank you, guys. For adults, we will not applaud. Thank you. Now, let's see. We're going to start with our first person is online. Do you see Mr. Kemp, Danielle Kemp? He's not online. In person, we have Zach Fields. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Zach Fields. I live at 1320 K Street, and I'm here tonight to ask you to vote in favor of appropriating money to reconstruct Inlet View Elementary. As you know, the state legislature appropriated enough funding that Anchorage now has $100 million to use for capital needs. Fortunately, we were still in legislative session when the school bond failed, and we were able to backfill that. I know that your capital needs are in excess of $100 million, and I think we should be looking at meeting all our needs in all our schools. Inlet View happens to be the hardest to meet because it's the largest project, and therefore very appropriate to fund with money that we provided for this purpose. I think it's important to acknowledge that addressing our capital backlog will not be sufficient. We're going to have to work together as a school board and legislators and PTAs and teachers and parents to update the BSA. Only by updating the BSA can we protect immersion programs, other specialty programs. Only by updating the BSA can we have adequate class sizes in all our schools. But you can take one very important step tonight to improve the fiscal stability of the school district and make sure that kids are safe. And that's by including Inlet View reconstruction in a broader package of capital projects. I think it's worth putting Inlet View's capital needs in the context of other schools. There are a lot of schools that don't have a safe entry vestibule where kids are at elevated and unnecessary risk of school shootings right now. There are other schools that have leaking roofs that need to be replaced right now. And there are other schools that are going to need to have boilers replaced right now. But at Inlet View right now, you have leaking sewage. You have toilets that over the last year have not functioned. Kids have not had any place to go to the bathroom in the entire school. You have classrooms where kids regularly have to wear winter coats. And you have buckets that have been put out under the leaking roof. So I guess I would ask you, is there a rational basis to put Inlet View kids at higher risk of being shot, at higher risk of infections from sewage, to not let them use the bathroom because they face all these challenges? Do multiple challenges mean that Inlet View kids should be placed at greater risk? Now, maybe if you didn't have any money, you would be in a position where you couldn't meet those needs. But again, the legislature gave you enough money that you have $100 million to address capital needs right now. And we did so very consciously so you could address your hardest need, and that is Inlet View. So I urge you to include Inlet View in your package of capital projects that you vote on tonight, because we have a lot of important schools throughout the district, and we need to improve our financial position now by addressing immediate capital needs. And then we need to work together heading into February to update the BSA so we can protect all the great programs across the district, from immersion to IB to music and sports. Only by doing both can we provide our students the safe learning environment that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have Khalil. Please, no applause. We tolerated the applause for the children. Adults, please, no applause. Khalil, help me with your name. I'm sorry.
Khalil Within.
Within, okay. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thanks. Khalil Within. I live in South Addition and I walk regularly with my family to Inlet View. My 4-year-old expects to attend kindergarten there next year. The founding mothers and fathers of Alaska thought public education was important enough to put public schools in the Alaska Constitution, referencing a system of public schools open to all children of the state. And it's common sense to me as a mother that investing in school building and design really pays off. And the research really backs this up. According to a study of a large school district tracking 5 million students over 10 years who moved from dilapidated schools to new facilities based on capital investment, the researchers concluded that building those new schools had positive academic impacts on students. Test scores improved in English and language arts. Test scores went up in math. Student attendance immediately improved. There was also significant improvement in student effort, and there were better grades. The lesson I took from this academic study is that capital investment in schools leads to measurable improvement in academic achievement, and that's why I'm here tonight. I'm asking you to fund the Inlet View reconstruction today. An article from a year ago really highlighted the many problems at the school. Some of them I've seen. I hear about these problems directly from other families with kids there. I've had friends who toured the school with their children looking at kindergarten and decided to go elsewhere based on how the building appeared, and they noticed different aspects of it that were in complete disrepair. As many of you know, the current school building does not meet ASD's own standards in multiple health and safety categories. The building's over capacity by 45 students this year, and population growth is actually expected in this area. The building does not have a fire sprinkler system. There's limited driveway access, and that leads to traffic backups on a regular basis. Over 550 work order requests took place in 2018 alone, and one large room doubles as the gym, the cafeteria, and the assembly area. when the sewer pipes clog on a regular basis, there's sewage in the bathrooms and on the playground. I've seen the signs telling us not to play there. Rain leaks are causing sagging, even recently when the kids were starting kindergarten, and dripping ceilings. When the heating system breaks, the kids are wearing winter coats in their class. And most distressing, there needs to be a line of sight between the office and the entryway. This is an unacceptable safety risk. The community has had an outpouring of support for this major investment today to fix these major problems. When I look at the new design, I really feel the excitement of opportunity for our kids. I'm inspired. I'm thankful for the engineers and the architects and the experts all over part of this room and all of the community input that has been shared in the past few months and the past few years, really. Our kids' safety is urgent and it's worth the investment. Our kids deserve a safe, heated school free of sewage contamination. Please fund the reconstruction today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Laura Nations. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped one person. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Christopher Siss. My apologies.
I'd like to stress the importance of language immersion programs as you contemplate the ASD budget. Government Hill Elementary School is a diverse place. A few dozen 5-year-olds each fall get to begin a 13-year educational journey here to become bilingual and biliterate through the Spanish immersion program. Some have never heard a word of Spanish when the 9 a.m. bell rings on their first day of kindergarten each August. Others only speak Spanish. There are kids from families just scraping by and others from affluent households. Some walk or ride their bikes, while others are driven to and from all corners of our city every morning and afternoon by dedicated and loving parents and guardians, sacrificing so their kids can participate in this immersive education. What do these kids have in common? They all get together in the same classrooms, and for 13 years, they learn English and Spanish together side by side as they cover their K through 12 curriculum in 2 languages. Even though our kids are young, I've already witnessed magical things in this language immersion program. I watched my 2-year-old reciting the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish, surrounded by a class of her kindergarten role models after escorting her older 5-year-old sister to class. And I'll never forget reading a Spanish book to my 5-year-old and some of her classmates one morning in her classroom, when for the first time she translated something from Spanish to English for me. She interrupted me mid-sentence in our story to translate her teacher's instructions for me, whispering, "Daddy, she said to stop reading and put our books away. It's calendar time." She was only 5 years old. These are the moments most educators dream of. Making these moments abundant is the highest calling of a school board, superintendent, or teacher. Creating moments like these is the one truly natural mandate of education. I understand finance and I'm aware of the need to match expenses with revenue, but there's a truth that many accountants, managers, and executives often forget, that the allure of spreadsheet savings can be deceiving. Your spreadsheet savings won't show you the losses not accounted for on the spreadsheet. They won't show you the loss of school revenue from families leaving ASD. They won't show you the loss of economic contributions to our neighborhood, city, and state when some families move elsewhere, seeking what ASD will no longer provide. The spreadsheets won't show you the loss of future contributions from those kids who go elsewhere and aren't contributing to our communities for decades to come. The ones who stay will no longer develop the same language skills that our current students are working so hard to acquire now. Our city and state will lose a significant source of talented, bilingual young people and professionals that are critical in our diverse city, state, and world. Please continue to prioritize funding for language immersion.
Thank you, sir. Now we have Laura. Welcome. Laura Nations, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I am the parent of 2 students at Government Hill Elementary's wonderful Spanish immersion program, David and Tomas. First, I want to acknowledge that the board and the district are facing this budget shortfall because as a state, we have failed to prioritize and fund education. That is not a problem that this board can solve on its own, and I recognize that. We must also be committed to make sure that our state government and legislature properly support and fund education in Alaska. Still, since the board is considering cutting the immersion program, I'm here tonight to ask you to please reconsider that decision for several reasons. First, this is not a particularly expensive program. It is the lowest extra cost per student of any of the immersion programs, costing only about $600 more per student per year. If the district closes the program, many families may take their students out of ASD entirely. That's definitely an option that my family is unfortunately considering. That would lead to further loss of funding. Our program does not require transportation, as parents and caregivers are responsible for that. That also saves money for ASD. We, as a community, are also committed to seeking other funding sources if necessary. The fact is that this program does not cost the district much more than traditional programs, and it's really important to our community. The Spanish immersion program attracts families to Anchorage, which means more funding for the district. At a time when our community is facing a shortage of workers, cutting this program will make it harder to attract people from out of state and around the state to Anchorage to raise our families here, which brings less funding to ASD. This is also not only an academic issue. I understand that the main focus here is dollars and cents, but there are non-economic reasons why this program matters as well. The Government Hill community is close-knit and has many staff, teachers, and families that have been involved in it for generations. The program is nearly 30 years old. Ours is the only dual language program in the district, with 50% of the students in the program coming from families who have at least one native Spanish speaker, like my family. It offers a level of inclusivity to parents and students that is critically important. Students who are new to the United States and do not yet speak English have the ability to participate and be successful in the classroom from day one. Their parents can participate in students' education, and our school community is much more united because at least half of our teachers and staff in the school speak Spanish, and they can work with the parents in their own language. That leads to better outcomes for students and a deeper sense of community. In Alaska, nearly 17% of our residents were born outside the United States or have at least one immigrant parent. Having a Spanish immersion program makes our community more united and inclusive. Learning Spanish helps our children be connected to their heritage and their family history. It fosters a sense of belonging, and it prepares our children for success. ASD often touts the diversity of our student population, and I agree that diversity is very important, but if diversity really matters to this district, we need to make it more than a talking point. The Spanish immersion program enriches our children, our school district, and our broader community. I know that the board must make cuts somewhere and recognize that that must be a very difficult choice, but the immersion program is not the place to make the cuts. Please support this vital program for our students today and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mike Schechter via phone. Mike Schechter. Okay, I'll come back. Try to come back. What about Danielle Kemp? Is he online? Okay. Guy Miller in person. Guy Miller. Not seeing Guy Miller. Melissa Castaneda. Melissa?
I'm her husband.
So
unfortunately, she's sick at home, so I'm going to read her testimony if that's okay.
Oh, you got to read her testimony? We will allow it since she's ill. That is not our usual process. So.
Okay, appreciate that. Again, my name is Chris Castaneda. We are Government Hill residents, and I'll be reading for my wife, Melissa Castaneda. Good evening. My name is Melissa Castaneda, and our family has our daughter enrolled in the ASD Government Hill two-way Spanish immersion program. It is an opportunity for our daughter that we do not take lightly. Our daughter is able to be immersed in half her school day in English and the other half in Spanish. 70 years ago, her grandparents and great-great-grandparents on both sides of the family navigated English-only policies, losing the ability to speak Inupiaq and Spanish. The benefit of immersion language programs offered by ASD extends beyond our family. She works at a tribal health organization which provides wonderful medical care services. A lot of our talent, whether CNRAs or primary care providers, make the journey north to Alaska. As lifelong Alaskans, we can sometimes forget how isolated our state is. We can forget our state has harsh winters. We can forget the cost of living is expensive compared to other states. We may also forget that some medical services may be far and away. For example, Alaska does not have a burn unit, and the nearest one available is over 3,000 air miles away. These questions and more are what shape a decision for a family to move to Alaska. The question of why take the chance to move to such an isolated state. Offering the immersion language programs help attract talent from various sectors. The immersion programs help influence the decision when it's all too easy to see the negatives pile up on the pros and the cons page. The importance of the immersion programs go well beyond the current and previous families and students who benefit from the programs. Please remember the language immersion programs are essential to Alaska's success. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nicholas Olano. Nicholas Olano. Corinne O'Neill. Corinne? Thank you. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Corinne O'Neill. Thank you, President and School Board, for providing me with this opportunity to provide public testimony about the 2023 budget. I came here asking for prioritization of the budget for the immersion programs. I have a son in kindergarten and a daughter in 3rd grade who are enrolled in the Government Health Spanish Immersion Program. We reside in Southeast Anchorage in the Trailside District, and we are not a Spanish-speaking family. We choose Government Hill because we believe that the immersion promotes values and education that benefit our children and community, including tolerance and understanding of other cultures, increased worldview and opportunities, and that exposure to languages leads to increased proficiency. I do not envy the position the board is in trying to balance this year's budget. However, I have several requests. First, please do not create an online survey and try to balance the budget. Please ask the district staff who are in operations, your principals, your teachers, and your students where they believe we should save money. In my professional career, I've seen many situations where sweeping budget cuts were made at an executive level without the clear input of those at the operational level on the impact. Many of these have resulted in large and impactful mistakes. Secondly, I think we all understand that balancing the budget cannot be a primarily budget cutting exercise. The second way to balance a budget is to raise revenue. The board needs to come up with a clear revenue raising strategy in our community. What new sources of revenue can replace other operating revenue streams? How can the board fully engage our community in these efforts? Although I've been invited to weigh in on budget cuts, I've never been invited to put out a yard sign on an educational bond or share in a social media post indicating my support for education. ASD needs a clear governmental strategy that engages our community and our city to increase the per student allocation and raise the tax cap. It certainly should not be a priority to cut a long-standing, well-established school programming in our community like Government Hill. What does it say about our values as a community when 11.8% of our district population is from a Latino descent and we have no Spanish immersion option? This is not the Anchorage I know and contribute to every day. To solve this problem does not equal budget cuts. The solution to a problem is innovation. In the words of another, learning another language is not only learning other words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things. I look forward to the innovation that this board can achieve. Thank you and gracias.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Paul McDonald. Paul, oh, he's on the phone? Okay. *6 to unmute, Paul. We can see him, but I can't hear him. Mr.
Bellamy, am I on?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
So my name is Paul McDonough. I am Sukpiak. I'm from the native village of Perryville, which is in the Gulf of Alaska. And I have 2 sons who go to Chugiak Elementary, and they attend Spanish immersion, although I'm actually not here to talk about immersion tonight. I'm a member of the National Urban Indigenous Family Coalition Resurgence Network, which I'll just say is the NUIFC Resurgence Network. It's a network for Indigenous educators nationwide. We recently met with the Secretary of Education to talk about issues, and I'm glad to be speaking to you, President Bellamy, and to the board tonight on the upcoming resolution. I want to ask the very full room tonight about why we started the school board meeting with the Dena'ina land acknowledgement and why we do this at the start of every meeting. My elders teach that we acknowledge the land for the same reason that the U.S. Constitution begins with a preamble. When we say we're on Dena'ina land, it's the same as our forefathers who said, "We the people," in order to form a more perfect union. We do this because it creates commitment and it collectivizes us under a shared sense of values. It says who we are and where we are. Furthermore, as a parent of Native children and an advocate within the NUIFC network, I'm proud to see this resolution that's before the school board. I believe it promotes policy that will help Indigenous students being seen and being validated in their schools. My colleagues at the Resurgence Network consider the invisibility crisis to be the most crucial barrier in tackling major issues from urban Indigenous students. The biggest issue that we see is the staggering dropout rate. In Anchorage, the dropout rate was 3 times larger, although I am happy to say that is larger than a lot of other urban school districts. We do believe that a land acknowledgement policy will significantly improve this even farther because it will allow Native voices to be heard and shared. My closing thought is to echo a statement from one of my colleagues in the Resurgence Network named Ann Merrill, who works at Dakota Prep, an alternative high school in Minneapolis. She said, "We believe that our ties are central to, our cultural ties are central to our impact in helping students learn and grow and graduate." I believe that our "we the people" statement should begin like this: "We are on Dena'ina land to ensure that we will help our students learn, grow, and graduate by using their culture as a tool for learning." In closing, I do want to thank President Bellamy and Member Jacobs for the passion and the work they put into building this resolution over the last few months, and for the members of the board for seeking community comments on this. Koyahana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDonough. Bonnie DeArmond in person. Bonnie? Welcome, Bonnie. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Bonnie DeArmond. I've been in your boardroom for the last 2 years, so I'm going to spare you my preamble because you've heard my voice before. I'm here to ask the million-dollar question that I know has been unfolding in your inboxes, on radio shows, on newspapers, and your voicemails. The question is, why spend a portion of the one-time funds on Inlet View Elementary? Many schools like Inlet View Elementary need safety vestibules. It looks like hopefully they'll receive that funding soon, maybe tonight. Many schools like Inlet View need work on their mechanical systems. Many schools like Inlet View need work on their plumbing systems. Many schools like Inlet View need work on their leaky roofs. The difference is that Inlet View has been so neglected that it needs all of these improvements. Tonight, there's a good chance that these schools will receive the funding for their safety upgrades. Inlet View will receive... ? Because Inlet View's building is so unsafe and so dilapidated, ASD's analysis team showed that replacing Inlet View would be the most economical way to provide a safe learning environment. ASD's own team conducted this review. ASD's own subcontractor, Western Demographics, then designated Inlet View as a highly proficient academic school and one of the highest utilized schools in the district. So why are we waffling on this? We have spent millions on planning, thousands on structural, civil, and mechanical reviews, and we've paid Western Demographics for information that we now know. ASD is in the business of education and is running this district in a financially responsible way. To leave this project hanging is financially imprudent, and we need to be respectful to taxpayers' money, who's already paid on the same project so much. In 2004, parents and teachers came to this school board and we asked for $4 million towards Inlet View. The project was set aside, and here we are in 2022. The cost has risen exponentially, as you're painfully aware, and it's being set aside? ? We know that Inlet View is more racially diverse than Anchorage as a whole. It has its own census tract with a higher rate of poverty than Anchorage as a whole, and it's one of the district's very high performing schools academically. We know that approximately half the student body is economically disadvantaged, speaks English as a second language, or has a disability. We know that it would be a tragedy to let any diverse, fully enrolled, highly performing school shut down or be at risk of shutting down. Inlet View is at grave risk today, but we have the money and the power to keep this school open, and it could finally be safe for the many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to Mike Schechter. He was having difficulty logging on. Mr. Schechter? *6 to unmute. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good evening.
Good evening. You have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the school board for all your hard work. You have a tough job, often thankless, and you have very difficult decisions to make. My family is zoned for Inlet View. We have twins, Maximus and Zoe, who will begin kindergarten next year. And I won't belabor any of the points that other folks have made. You know how dilapidated the building is. You know how lacking it is on a multitude of health, safety, and welfare measures. You know how important the school is to its community and to the diverse population that it serves. School choice and lottery programs are great for those who have the privilege, the time, the money, and the flexibility to take advantage. But the zone school for a neighborhood, particularly a neighborhood like Inlet Views that encompasses so many great different parts of our socioeconomic fabric, is a focal point for bringing the community together. And the unfortunate problem is that a school building that is failing will not fail those who are privileged, but it will only fail those who don't have the privilege and the ability to go elsewhere in the district with their children. It's incumbent upon us to provide a safe, clean, high-performing academic environment for every child in the Inlet View district. And I hope that you will please include the Inlet View rebuild in the capital budget that you vote on tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Eleanor Andrews. There she is. Welcome, Ms. Andrews. You have 3 minutes. They're both on.
My name is Eleanor Andrews. I live in the Inlet View neighborhood, and I've lived there off and on for about 30 years. First of all, I want to be proper and say thank you, Madam President. Welcome the new superintendent. And those of you that I've testified before, I'm going to go back in time a little bit because I know where you are. These are hard decisions. I'm not going to repeat all the reasons Inlet View needs a new school. The kids, the parents, the neighbors have spoken so eloquently. But I want to talk about the hard job of being elected officials. You don't get to do it the easy way. You have to do it the right way. And it's so important to recognize what the issues are and where the resources come from. In order for us to have a successful district, we have to partner with the municipality. That's been hard the last couple of years. They can't partner with themselves. We have to partner with the legislature because that is where the money comes from. And I know that these last couple of years, these last couple of sessions, it's been difficult for them to come together on issues that they know benefit each other, but they want to see who's going to win. I know that Representative Fields has worked very hard to partner with people that they don't agree with on much else, but they recognized that we needed a capital appropriation to replace the school. And it's not just about cutting things, programs, and taking a nickel from here and putting a dime over there. We have to think outside the box. I was instrumental, I think the driving force in getting a new school at Fairview. And the neighborhood loved it so much, and the school district loved it so much that they decided we better do that at Denali, because these are neighborhoods that are small, bordered by big, busy streets. If you don't have a school in that area, The kids have to be bused away from home. And we did by thinking outside the box. We didn't rob Peter to pay Paul. We found new money. We had different programs. And I'm thinking that you guys are smart enough to do that. New superintendent. You don't have to take the scissors out to solve a problem. I've never seen anything that had more support in this district than a new school at Inlet View. And I implore you to partner with people who support you, with governmental entities that support you, and with the neighbors that support you. Now I see how everybody's on time because you can see the clock. So I'm available to talk to you about things that I think will work, but I think this is your last chance to do it right. It'll be more expensive later.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Rachel Byers. Welcome, Rachel. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Byers, and I'm the Assistant Director at Children's World Bilingual Montessori, a local Spanish immersion early learning center here in Anchorage. I am here today to be the voice of our community and express our serious concern with the possibility of ending the immersion programs in the Anchorage School District. I assume that as Anchorage School Board members, you are aware of the amazing benefits that learning a second language in education has, but in case you're not, I'll list a few. Children who learn a second language show an increase in problem-solving skills, critical thinking, listening skills. They have an improvement in memory, concentration, and the ability to multitask. They've also showed an enhancement in creativity and mental flexibility. I would hope that you would agree that these attributes are essential to the success of students within your school. Our program serves children from the age of 8 weeks to 6 years old, essentially infants through pre-K. Our students are immersed in Spanish and cultures from around the world, creating an inclusive environment that forms the foundation of acceptance later in life. Many of our students have completed our program and are enrolled in your immersion programs throughout the city, from Government Hill to O'Malley to Sand Lake to Rolkshuk, to name just a few. A mother contacted our school this past week to express her concern she has on her immersion program closing. Her oldest son completed our program and continued to Government Hill. He is enrolled in the Spanish immersion program. She was expressing how her son's success and school identity are intertwined with this immersion program, and the thought of it closing caused her great worry. My worry began to grow too. I worry why time and time again, education is an afterthought, with the politics of the school board scrambling to figure out how to best balance their pockets rather than fight for what is best for the children. I worry why the poll sent to parents was targeted at immersion programs, the arts, the sports, clubs, mental health counseling, where a lot of children find passion, hope, and support in their lives. I worry for every child enrolled in my school who has developed a strong love and sense of self through our immersion program. What opportunities will they have if the school board is targeting the areas of education that are truly important in success later in life? For too long, I have seen the focus of school districts be on ridiculous standardized test results that only quantify a child's ability to take a test. When did the goal of enriching children's lives become lost to an A+ ribbon that hangs outside a school? I implore you to look within yourselves and ask, is this really the best solution you could come up with? Destroying true areas of education that enhance the child's life? I hope not. I hope you can do better. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Next, we have Dayarina Cheney. Nope. Okay. Victoria Kloss. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Victoria Claus, and I'm here to advocate for the immersion programs. I'm the mother of a second grader in the Spanish immersion program and 2 preschoolers who were hoping to follow in their big brother's footsteps. Early language learning provides economic and cognitive advantages. It's good for your brain. As the speaker before me just talked about, it's good for problem solving, creativity, flexibility in thinking, and memory skills. It's also good for your career in a connected world. For example, in my workplace right here in Anchorage, Alaska, within the last year, there have been multiple opportunities that were only open to people fluent in Spanish. Anchorage prides itself on diversity, and the immersion programs are one of the most prominent ways that ASD embraces that. Spanish is the second most spoken native language in the world, and with its native and bilingual speakers, I was surprised to find out that the U.S. is the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world after Mexico. The time to learn languages is as a young child, and the daily hours spent speaking, reading, writing, and hearing a foreign language during the school day cannot be replaced or replicated by families on their own. A class on Saturday morning just won't do the same thing. The rigor of the Spanish immersion program is a huge part of why my son loves school. It's the part of school that engages him and challenges and interests him. If you end this program and then later have funds to restart it, because I am an accountant and I do understand budgets and their difficulties, but if you later have the funds to restart it, that won't, my son and all the other current students will still have lost their opportunity to go through the program and become fluent in another language and complete that path that they have been working so hard for. So I ask you to please try to find a way to preserve this program that supports children's thinking, their academic achievement, and their career opportunities later in life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephanie Cornwell. And she's on the phone. *6 to unmute. Ms. Cornwell?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Hi, thank you. I have struggled with what to put into this 3 minutes I have to speak. I am a former Anchorage School District teacher, been in statewide special ed administration and university work. I'm passionate about this. I'm disheartened by the fact that so much of the testimony time has been taken up by, rightfully so, passionate advocates for Government Hill, but that's not even on the agenda. To me, I feel like the issue is this $37 million of, COVID recovery funds that the board has complete discretion over to triage and figure out what the school community needs to move forward. It's not a pretty situation. And I don't pretend to know everything at all. I don't. But what I do is I contacted staff, union members, community members, union leadership, school board members to try to make sense of what is everyone saying, what's the right avenue. And I wish the school district did more of that. And the general consensus is we need to wait. We need to wait. We cannot make a decision tonight on spending $37 million of funding that could help plug the holes in the dam of what we're facing. The weeks to come are going to be atrocious. There are going to be angry people because the decisions are not going to be easy. And that's just the reality that we're facing. And we need to make the best decision. And the voters decided not to pass the bond for Inlet View. That's 238 students with their current population. That's less than 1% of the entire Anchorage School District. That doesn't mean that they don't need a new building. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that we need to look at things. We need to prioritize, evaluate what are the level 1, 2, 3 things that need to be done. We have a language arts curriculum that is at risk of not being compliant with federal standards. How do we give kids high school diplomas if we're not in compliance with that? How do we make sure kids have the right curricular materials in their hands if we don't do that? Inlet View wouldn't even be built till 2024? We have immediate needs.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. We have approximately 4 minutes left. Our last speaker in this hour will be Cliff Crow. Is it Crow or Crow? Cliff Crow.
Hi, I'm Cliff Crow. I live at 220 West Manor Avenue with my wife, Teresa, and I'm a proud product of Inlet View Central and West. And in that spirit, in the great education that I got here at the Anchorage School District, I want to tell you that we need to save the Spanish immersion program in Government Hill Elementary School. I can give you a lot of reasons for that, but you don't need to listen to me. You've heard better testimony from the students in the program and some fine parents like Chris Siss and Melissa and Chris Castaneda. Instead, I want to talk about a whole new approach, a rethinking. We need to grow the pie and not fight over slices. We need to have a different approach and elect state legislators with the right approach. I propose a 4-point plan to deal with this big deficit that looms over the school district like an anvil and a giant sword simultaneously. Number one, we need to update the BSA to adjust for inflation and give the Anchorage School District and school districts around our state more money. Number two, we need to end a moratorium on school bond debt reimbursement. I understand that there are hundreds of millions of dollars in deferred maintenance that this moratorium on school bond on reimbursing the school bond debt has created. I understand maybe there's $684 million in deferred maintenance costs here at the Anchorage School District alone. So we need to get more money in that way as well. Number three, we need to return to a defined benefit system for teachers and other people in the school districts and for public employees generally. This would reduce costs of turnover that are heavy here in the Anchorage School District and increase retention, improving educational outcomes. And number four, and this would be the fourth element, a little bit different approach. In addition, we need to explore a change in the educational funding form to see if the Anchorage School District can do better. But I want to stress the main focus is to drop a Lord of the Flies mentality. Get out of this idea of what can we cut and how we're going to avoid pitting X versus Y. And as I said, grow the pie through getting more funding from the state legislature, appropriate funding to serve K through 12 education, a vital and constitutionally mandated responsibility of the state of Alaska. And I think it's particularly important to understand that Alaska is different from other states in a whole bunch of ways. But one really important one is that the state of Alaska, of course, provides substantially more funding for K through 12 education than do the state governments in other states, where local governments are far more important. Thanks a lot, folks. Happy to talk to you more at any time.
Thank you very much. I'm told that we can go until 7:28 in our first hour. I was mistaken. Mary Geddes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Mary Geddes. I have lived close to Inlet View, only one house away. My family has been there for more than 30 years. I'm not testifying as a parent of a school child, not presently a parent of a school child, but I am a neighbor. And importantly, I am a property owner. I wanted to express my strong support for utilizing the school bond debt reimbursement to fully fund the rebuilding of Inlet View this fiscal year. There is no time like the present for rebuilding this wholly derelict building. Inlet View is not just the heart of our community, it is a driver of our economic stability and growth. If we wait, costs will only increase. The outward migration that the economists are so concerned about with respect to Alaska's population, our income earning demographic, it's that population that we want to keep, that we want to attract. How do we do that? We make sure that we have
clean, safe, attractive school facilities. So the answer to our outward migration is certainly begins with replacing this derelict structure. The plan has been approved by the UDC. Let's keep the momentum going, keep the costs low, and keep the kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have the question for the board. We have approximately 15 more people to go. Do we want to continue, or do we want to stick to our schedule of, yes.
Madam Chair, I move we suspend our rules and allocate another half hour to try to finish this list.
Thank you. In addition to what you have in front of you, there are 5 more that signed up. So we might need more than a half hour.
Let's make it 40 minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second to suspend our rules and extend public testimony for another 40 minutes. That will take us to approximately 8:10. Would the board like to take a brief recess before we continue, or at the end of? Okay.
We recess at the end
At the end?
testimony.
Thank you. All right. Is there any opposition to the motion to continue, suspend rules and continue? Seeing none, we will continue. Clyde Carey, in person. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Clyde Carey, and thank you for giving the time to speak with you today. I'm here to talk about Inlet View Elementary. Hopefully be able to talk you into allocating some funds to invest into Inlet View Elementary. So I live right next door to Inlet View, and I am the father of a kindergartner as well as a second grader that attends Inlet View Elementary. Building a new Inlet View has been on the table for a very long time, and the school district has already invested millions of dollars into its design, as well as other studies related to the project. I do believe that allocating state funds to rebuild the Inlet View Elementary School is a great investment for several reasons, but here's 2 to think about. The current school is old and requires a lot of maintenance, and the new school would take care of a lot of the maintenance and a lot of the money that the school district uses on a regular basis to make those repairs to Inlet View. And number 2, being an old school, it is not very energy efficient at all. So I do see that the school is spending a lot of money on heating and lighting that school. For example, I live right next door and I can see those old orange halogen floodlights on all night long, and that just can't be very energy efficient. On top of all the financial reasons for replacing the school, it's also a great community investment. Inlet View is the only IB elementary school in the city, and the new design will help complement the IB curriculum tremendously, and therefore helping to add to the objectives of creating a high-performing school district here in Anchorage. Having a modern and safe school in every neighborhood is very important for young families like myself. It's not just, we shouldn't just be able to live in certain parts or certain sides of town to have access to a school. It's comforting to know that you can live in just about any neighborhood in Anchorage and have a safe and modern school nearby for your children to attend. Please consider allocating state funds to use for the Inlet View Elementary School replacement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Daniela Delozer. Daniela, welcome.
Hi, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Daniela Delozer. I'm a new parent at Inlet View. I'm here to speak about Inlet View. We should not wait to fund the replacement of Inlet View Elementary. This school's students and families have been asked to get in the back of the line over and over. There are kids that are now in high school from when the process began for studying and designing the needed replacement of Inlet View. ASD's own analysis shows building replacement will save more dollars than major renovation and would not address time-sensitive safety improvements that others have already mentioned. I understand how on its face, putting a large portion of the available funding towards one school wouldn't seem fair. But I hope some of the people in this room and on the phone and in the community have a deeper understanding of the needs of Inlet View after hearing many of the folks that spoke before me. So I won't also belabor those points. about how Inlet View is one of the oldest schools in Anchorage, how it's overutilized, how it's topping ASD's maintenance requests for more than a decade, how $2 million has already been spent by ASD planning a design for the replacement of the building, and how the Urban Design Commission last month is approved the design process. And so this is ready for permitting and funding by ASD tonight. We all know that cost, quality, and schedule are all negatively affected by a longer wait for funding. Right now is the time to get solid pricing from subcontractors. It's the best time to bid spring and summer 2023 work. Inflation will increase the project cost significantly, and we know that propping up failing infrastructure just costs taxpayers more every year. The school is overutilized, it's diverse and high performing, and therefore it is not an appropriate candidate for closure. That being said, it cannot continue to offer the level of service to students needed much longer. You have a path here for reconstruction so that Inlet View has a future as the elementary institution in Anchorage it is and should continue to be. I would urge you to take this path and be a part of ensuring its future, as rebuilding Inlet View would also contribute to the revitalization of downtown Anchorage, improvement of ASD's academic performance, and serve a diverse student body for generations to come. I work in public health, and I'd like to share with you something that my favorite chief medical officer, Ann Zink, always keeps in mind. She said a mentor of hers gave her the best career advice she's ever gotten, which is do what is right for the patient, and the rest is just noise. Based on all the information you have received from your own ASD capital planning and construction department, as well as the community of IAV about the long-standing needs of this building, I'm asking you to do what's right for the students of IVE and let the rest just be noise.
Thank you very much. Jesse Salway. Jesse? Okay, not seeing Jesse. Moira Smith. Moira not here. Okay. Virginia Bonnie Limbo. Yes, welcome.
Madam President?
Yes.
I was just going to suggest, since we do have 2 seats, that we let the person on deck know who they are so they can come down and sit. And then as the speaker finishes, we can let the next person know, and they can start this way while that person's speaking. To just take out some of the travel time.
Okay, we can do that. Just come up when the speaker before you is finished. We started a new protocol during COVID. After Virginia, we have Robert Bundy. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have sent you my comments in writing. I usually read them, but I'm not going to do so tonight. I just wanted to point out some numbers that are really startling. Inflation, 8.6% as of August. That will add $266,316 to the cost of the school before compounding for every year that is delayed. And if we take this funding and divide it in half, part now, part later, as if we were putting something away on layaway at Walmart, what we risk is not getting the funds from another source in time, delaying it even farther, increasing the cost. The other increase in the cost is the terrible cost of maintenance that come out of the operating budget of the school district. They worked very hard to get figures for me between 2017 and 2022, and that is $421,546 in those 6 years to keep that building minimally habitable. That averages out to over $70,000 a year for repairs. So every year that we delay, that's more money that's going to be spent. This building has a life expectancy of 50 years. K through 7 is 8 years. So that means, K through 6 is 7 years. And that means out of that 50-year lifespan of the school, we have 8 generations of students who will get a sterling education. The rest of my remarks I would like to address to the foreign language immersion programs, which are the crown and the jewel of the Anchorage school system. I remember after 9/11, an Army general of national prominence, I wish I could remember his name, saying foreign language programs are important for national security because of globalization, cultural, economic, military. You need people who are native speakers, who start the language in childhood, and that's what these programs do. The other thing is we had friends from outside who sent their children to a French foreign language school, but that was a private school because public wasn't available to them. And they were well-to-do people, they paid tuition that was equivalent to college tuition. And what do we have here in Anchorage? We have wealthy people, middle-class people, poor people who can get the same sterling foreign language education at a public school. That's our way of redressing, in part, the imbalance between privilege and lack of privilege. So I'm asking you to put two priorities, Inlet View and foreign language immersion. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Bundy. You have 3 minutes, followed by Michael Teo.
Thank you. My name is Robert Bundy. I've lived about a block from Inlet View for about 40 years. My daughters went to Inlet View and my grandsons. One just graduated from Inlet View. The other is a 5th grader. First of all, to follow up on what Bonnie just said, Inlet View is an IB program which emphasizes foreign language. All the kids are learning Spanish as part of the IB program, not to the level, of course, of the immersion program, but they are learning Spanish as part of the IB program. That speaks to the community of Inlet View. People of all of our Inlet View area put together the work and the effort to put that IB program together. And what that tells you, I think, is the incredible support among the Inlet View area, the Inlet View district, all of the people whose kids go to Inlet View for education and the vital importance of education. The Inlet View area, if you look at the voting records from Inlet View, the precincts that comprise Inlet View, you'll find that I think that we supported the bond by a factor of 2 to 1. And I bet you if you go back all the years when all the other schools have been renovated and rebuilt and expanded, the Inlet View area has always supported them. Now, that's not to say that, well, it's our turn now, so give us away. What it does show you, I think, is how important the people of our Inlet View area find education to be. And that includes all the people of our area. Remember, as other people have told you, the diversity, as that's usually considered, is at least the same as the rest of the city. We're as diverse as the entire rest of Anchorage, and we have more people of economic disadvantage in Anchorage. Over half of the people in the Inlet View area, that the district, earn a family income of less than $49,000. So those are the kids that need Inlet View. Those are the kids that that are exposed now to the IB program. Those are the kids that need a safe and good place to learn. And I guarantee you, from what I have seen of the Inlet View, having picked up my grandchildren after school and taken them to school when they were really young, I can tell you that the people that are involved in Inlet View care about education. An investment in this new school is a wise investment indeed if you really care about the education of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Michael Teo, oh, there you are.
Good evening. Thank you. Come to you second time in a few months to testify and advocate for the rebuild of Inlet View. So I live in the neighborhood and walk my son to school, the kindergarten there, when possible, every morning. So I watched the September board meeting on YouTube, and I want to reply to 2 items. One was board members challenged the public to articulate what they thought the best use of these capital funds were. And you've heard many people tonight advocate the rebuilding of Inlet View. I want to answer that also by saying rebuilding Inlet View is well overdue. It's been overdue for many years and it should be at the top of the list. To not rebuild it now will continue the past practice of not investing in this important neighborhood school. And that is exactly why the school is past the point of being repaired or renovated. Not funding the rebuilding the school with these funds now drives up rebuilding costs in the future, and that's if there is funding in the future. The school district would be essentially discarding the investments already made, significant investments in redesign, the time advisory groups have given to shaping the redesign. The need to rebuild has existed for a very long time, well before concerns for next year's budget came to light. I ask for how long Inlet View has been waiting for a rebuild to weigh heavily in the decision process. Rebuilding the school is exactly the type of thing that should be accomplished with one-time money, while operating budgets when they rely on one-time money, they can do so with great risk. At the September meeting, I also heard a board member articulate that this state funding can be used however the board sees fit. As a community member and as parent of a student, I'm not intimately familiar with the details to know if there were any limitations placed on that funding. But I know the intention was to be used for capital improvements for Inlet View and other schools. I would be worried that if it did not get used for rebuilding, it would make the legislature less likely to allocate funds to rebuilding in the future. Thank you for taking public testimony extending tonight.
Thank you very much, sir. We're going to the phone with Maura Smith. Maura, can you hear? *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Hi
you.
there. Good evening. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Sorry for technical difficulties. I am before you by telephone this evening to speak to memo number 0024 and its potential amendment this evening. And I've spoken with you several times, sometimes individually and sometimes before the board. I'll reiterate what I've said before, which is to thank you and the administration for your hard work and for the hard decisions you have to make. Tonight is the night. You hold the keys. Eleanor Andrews came and could not have said it better. Your job is hard, but you hold the keys. You don't need to wait to make a decision about Inlet View. We can envision together a future that reflects the values of the International Baccalaureate program, one that reflects, real world values of curiosity, being inquisitive, being knowledgeable, and imagining that we don't have to pit, a security vestibule at a school like Chugach, which has very recently been redone, against the construction of a new school at Inlet View. I have spent time in 5 Anchorage schools throughout my time as a student in Anchorage and as a parent and a step parent. And there's no discussion that Inlet View needs to be replaced. And I haven't heard any serious dispute of that from really anyone. So the only question becomes when. And I want to reiterate what Ms. DeArmond said earlier, which is this is a conversation we have been having as a community for 18 years, at least. It is a conversation that should end tonight. I hope that you as school board members will recognize that because you hold the keys, you are uniquely able to make the hard decision to go ahead and move forward with funding for Inlet View. Because in the end, it's not a hard decision. The fundamentals will not change between now and February. The need at that school will not change. The day-to-day pictures of inadequacies of that school will not change. The fire code violations will not change. The only thing that will change is that costs will go up, as Ms. Lumbo referenced. I want to thank members Wilson and Jacobs and others who have come to the school and seen it firsthand and invested their time and energy in this school and in our district. And I'd like to tell you that because you hold the keys, we ask you to use your power to appropriate the funds to fully fund Inlet View tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'd like to invite Cindy Fryer and Melissa Hardesty. Cindy Fryer and Melissa Hardesty.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Cindy
Name,
Fryer,
please.
and first,
Cindy,
I would
okay.
like to
We can hear-
I would like to thank the board for your continued efforts to facilitate the best possible educational outcomes for our district kids. As a new Inlet View parent, design professional, and South Addition community member, I'm testifying in support of using a portion of the funds appropriated by the state legislature to fund the construction of a much-needed replacement for Inlet View Elementary School. As a parent, and in considering the elementary school options for our 5-year-old, we had little doubt that the walking or biking distance to our neighborhood school was top priority. Next was Inlet View's known good standing in the community, and lastly was the condition of the building. This said, our kids are well worthy, above worthy, of a new school free of the current security, maintenance, and creature comfort deficiencies known of this building. I appreciate that the board is balancing many variables and doing the hard work to determine the most fitting use of these funds. In light of the recent Urban Design Council approval, I stress that now is the time for Inlet View. After decades of kicking the can farther down the road by refusing the use of these funds for the betterment of this building, you will be sending an increasingly sad message to the Orca families and again further delay addressing the critical needs of this facility. Please, please, please find a path forward now, today, to funding the proposed Inlet Elementary School replacement project. Please help our kids feel proud and encouraged in a new learning environment. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you very much. Melissa Hardesty and Amanda Compton, please come forward. Yeah, Amanda should be on the phone, but she's not there. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank you for this opportunity to come before the board, and thank you for your time and listening. I'm here today in support of immersion programs in general in the district. I'm a parent and a person who lives in the Anchorage School District, and I have a child in the Spanish immersion program. I'm not going to reiterate things that other people have said regarding the importance of immersion. I think that many valid points have been made, and I agree with all of them. I understand that the board is in a very difficult position with a fixed budget and the need to allocate those funds and move forward educating our youth. So in the minutes that I have, I would like to offer some interesting suggestions. I would like to point out that that not all immersion programs are the same with regard to their demand, with regard to the prevalence of that language in the community, and as it relates to two-directional immersion, which I think is an important consideration. And when I think that when you guys are looking at the budget cuts, rather than considering all immersion as a single item, that it might be important to get a little bit more creative and look at each individual immersion program and weigh its pros and cons and decide whether or not that is something that can be sustained in the department. I would say that immersion programs in general that have a high two-directional immersion might be worthy of additional consideration, because I think that those students would have considerable expense upon the school district for educating outside of something like an immersion program. So using Spanish as an example, it has been previously pointed out that approximately half the students at the Spanish immersion program are primary Spanish speakers in the home. And I think that if you do something like eliminate a Spanish immersion program, that you're going to be then faced with the additional expenses of educating those children, not to mention the fact that they potentially would get behind. So I would suggest a few things to the board. First of all, identifying if immersion cuts are to be considered as a board item, potentially identifying the highest demand. So let's just say you have 6 immersion programs, looking at all of them, how many people are applying, what is the demand for this particular immersion program, to help yourself assess the values of each of the individual immersion programs. And if cuts need to be made, potentially prioritizing some of the higher demand immersion programs and maybe expanding capacity at those schools, so that that immersion could be kept in some form. Also, I would consider, as many have said, that immersion is in high demand. And I think that there are many people who go to immersion schools that would be willing to consider something like an immersion fee that could be income based. So, individual families would have income assessments and potentially pay a fee like one would pay for other after school activities to allow additional access to immersion. So thank you for your time. And I hope that you'll consider these suggestions.
Thank you very much. Amanda Compton, online. I don't see her. Maria Horn Rollins and Tyler Morales. Welcome.
I'm providing testimony today to urge this board to preserve the Spanish immersion program at Government Hill Elementary School. I am begging members to prioritize bilingual education for Anchorage students as you navigate the challenge of preparing a balanced budget for the upcoming year. My daughter Nola is a 4th grade Spanish immersion student at Government Hill who began the program in kindergarten. Her pursuit of the Spanish language has not only been a rewarding educational experience, but also a deeply personal endeavor for our family. I'm a first-generation Mexican American. My mother came to the United States from Canatlan, Durango, Mexico, when she was 8 years old. She faced obstacles in her pursuit of the American dream, including poverty and racism. She also faced significant pressure to assimilate quickly. Thus, she grew up embarrassed about her Spanish accent and insisted that her children would not suffer that shame. My brother and I would learn English perfectly, so she didn't speak to us in Spanish. As a woman of bicultural heritage, I faced a different kind of racial ethnic prejudice than my mother. I was teased for looking and acting too white. In elementary school, my heart ached for a darker complexion and a greater Spanish vocabulary. It is a pain that lingers today. It is a pain I hope Nola never experiences. You see, Nola has fair skin, red hair, and speaks Spanish beautifully. At a time when being Mexican continues to be a liability in this country, the Spanish immersion program at Government Hill is reinforcing Nola's pride in her Mexican heritage and her love for the Spanish language. Learning Spanish has not only been good for her brain, it has been nourishing for her soul and a potent salve for healing multi-generational wounds in our family. Bilingualism is among the greatest educational gifts I can give Nola. I also suspect it will serve as a formidable opponent against any future nefarious efforts to shake her confidence and security in her cultural identity. Cutting the Spanish immersion program at Government Hill may save the district money now, but it will prompt significant losses. The loss of fostering superior advantages in brain development among generations of students, the loss of attracting and maintaining district membership by families who value bilingual education, the loss of equipping future generations with competitive advantage in an increasingly multilingual economy, the loss of meaningful efforts to strengthen multicultural understanding and identity. Our children deserve every educational opportunity. We must resist the temptation of short-sighted cost savings lest we expedite our race to the bottom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Tyler Morales, you have 3 minutes, followed by Chandra Ramos.
Hello. My name is Tyler Morales, and I have a few things to say to the board. Learning a second language changed my life. It changed my classmates' lives. It changed my mom's life. And even my family in Mexico can communicate me now because of the Spanish immersion program. I would not be where I'm at today without being able to read, write, and speak Spanish. And according to a study done by the American Community Survey of the U.S. Census Bureau in 2020, 78.5% of the U.S. population speaks English. And then I guess you can guess the second most spoken language would be Spanish. And that takes up 13.2% of the U.S. population, a combined total of 91.7%. At work, I've met Hispanic parents who deeply regret not teaching their children Spanish because to live the American dream, you need to know English. The Spanish immersion program does nothing but encourage our children's future to experience life on the other side of the border, to not only understand the language, but to interact with humans who speak it as well. It creates friendships that last a lifetime. opportunities that greatly impact lives, all thanks to the programs, just like the Spanish Immersion Program. You can't put a price on something like that, and ever since it came to my attention a few days ago, maybe it's time to cut corners somewhere else. Learning a second language changed my life and my mom's life for the better. An American single mother creating and running a business from scratch here in Anchorage, Alaska, and driving my cranky butt from O'Malley to Government Hill every day for 7 years is not something a parent should have to go through just so her Mexican son can learn Spanish as a second language. I believe backpedaling and cutting costs should not be the topic of discussion today, but how we can implement more immersion programs around Anchorage, it should be the next step. Thank you for your time.
And thank you very much. Next, we have Chandra Ramos and Jade Leon. Hi, welcome.
Thank you everyone for taking the time for listening to us this evening. We've heard a lot of really powerful statements, personal testimonies, and I want to thank everyone for sharing their stories as well. So, as you know, my name is Chandra. I've lived in Anchorage for about 18 years now. This is the first time I've ever been compelled to come to one of these meetings in person. Seen a few tidbits here and there online, but I've never been compelled to come in. So, the reason I'm here is because, okay, my girls go to the Spanish Immersion Program at Government Hill, and it's been such a huge blessing for them. For our families. You have no idea how much love and support the kids feel at this school. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to visit. It's a really great program. I know there are lots of good schools. I myself work for the school district. I'm a bus driver, which I've been doing for about 18 years. So long-term sort of bus driver. I met my husband at work actually, and his first language is Spanish, so that was one of the reasons why it was important for us to send our kids to that school. I wanted them to be able to communicate with their grandparents, and I knew a lot of people growing up that could speak Spanish, but they didn't read or write Spanish, and I wanted the full realm of biliteracy. So I think what the immersion programs really represent is like the best of what ASD has to offer, and if you start scaling things like that back, you're sort of just watering down some of these programs, and really, for me, I don't feel like my kids would fit into a neighborhood program, and I would have to consider maybe homeschooling or other alternatives. Our neighborhood isn't the greatest. I'm sure the school there is pretty good, but like ever since 2016, when they legalized marijuana, we've been finding needles and stuff like that. I don't want my kids walking to a school where stuff like that is around. So yeah, I would consider keeping my kids home, and even furthermore, I may even consider leaving the state, because this is one of the things that ties us to this community. This is like the bright spot for us, this school that my kids go to. I don't know what else to say. It's a really great program. I know there's lots of good schools out there, but this is the one that works for us. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you guys have good luck with these tough decisions you have to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jade Leon and Arthur Sosa.
Hola, me llamo Jade Leon y soy maestra de español en Clark Middle School. Hello, my name is Jade Leon, and I'm a Spanish teacher at Clark Middle School. I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to speak on the incredible impact that the Spanish Immersion Program has had on my life. I am a graduate of the Government Hill Romig West program. I started kindergarten in 1996 as the 4th cohort in the program, and I continued it till my graduation in 2009. My parents don't speak a word of Spanish, so for me to be here in my 9th year as a Spanish teacher at Clark Middle School is proof of how significant the gift of bilingualism is and how much it can change the trajectory of one's life. Everybody who knows me knows that I owe everything that I have to the Spanish Immersion Program, and to my parents, who, despite being monolingual English speakers, knew 25 years ago how important language would be for me. Every aspect of my life has been molded by it. My closest friends I met while studying Spanish. My ASD colleagues, many of whom are in this very room right now, were once my teachers and mentors. My husband
a first-generation Mexican-American I met as a result of my connection to the Spanish-speaking community here in Anchorage. And my beautiful son, who is half Mexican, I get to proudly raise as bilingual. And of course, lastly, my job, where I have the amazing opportunity to teach Spanish in the most diverse neighborhood in the country. Everything that I love and everything that I have would not be possible without the immersion program. Before I became a mother, I knew that I needed my future children in immersion. I've often told my husband that it didn't really matter if he was in Spanish or not. It just mattered that he was in immersion. I wanted him to learn a second or third language because I had already seen how firsthand the doors were opened when you are bilingual or polylingual. My son is now 4.5 and about to start kindergarten, and it truly breaks my heart after years of looking forward to putting my son into an immersion program that I have to be here in front of the school board anxiously defending it. Bilingualism is the only way to stay relevant in the global job market. According to Forbes magazine, 1 in 3 people in the US will speak Spanish by the year 2050. That's only about 25 years away. By the time that children born now enter the workforce, bilingualism will be the standard, not the perk. In such a diverse community with so many languages represented, it feels completely backwards to shut down opportunities like immersion for future generations. If we want to keep ASD as a competitive district that parents, teachers, and students want to be a part of, we need to assure that language immersion is available to all our families. Gracias por su tiempo. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your time. I'd like to invite Caleb Sutton. Welcome, Mr. Sosa.
Well, thank you. Buenas noches a todos. Quisiera agradecerles este tiempo de aprovechar, de comunicar con ustedes. Es un tema muy importante para nosotros en mi escuela. Y yo como director de Inlet View, muy orgulloso de la comunidad, quiero estar aquí para aprovechar y compartir información. As a principal of Inlet View, a proud principal of Inlet View, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to be here. I too have seen the benefits of the bilingual program. My daughter went through it from Government Hill, Romig, and then on to West. And the Spanish IB program is doing a great job at the college that she's attending right now. So in being the principal at Inlet View, our focus is Spanish. So for the Americas, you have the focus of French or Spanish. We have chosen Spanish. And I just want to say I'm a supporter of many languages, world languages, and especially a supporter of Inlet View. Inlet View is a neighborhood school that was established in 1959. The rich tradition of active parent involvement and academic rigor are some of the hallmarks of the South Addition community. Inlet View officially became an IB PYP school, the first in the state of Alaska last year. And actually, we're going to be celebrating this Thursday that 1 year mile mark, or that 1 year anniversary. We're approaching that anniversary, as like I said. When we look at the mission statement of Inlet View focuses on the development of the whole child, the knowledgeable, the inquirer, both in the class and abroad. We aim to provide caring, respectful, and mindful people who recognize the common humanity and shared guardianship of the planet. We will empower students to successfully solve real-world problems and strengthen their enjoyment of working towards a goal. We facilitate learning and support all students so they become passionate, engaged, lifelong learners who help to create a more caring and peaceful world. Those are all the key attributes that we have at our school and what we offer. And I think that investing in Inlet View would be prudent and a great investment, a good return on your investment, because as you can tell, the emphasis of the world language of Spanish and the neighborhood and the involvement of all the students is just incredible. I see my time's running out. We currently have 235 students at Inlet View. It's 55% white and 44% students of color. I would give you the demographics if I had more time. But basically, when you look at the ontology and the epistemology and the inquiry of learning, you'll see why it would be wise to invest in Inlet View. Thank you for your time. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Next, welcome Mr. Sutton, followed by Celeste Grouden online. Mr. Sutton.
Hi, you've heard from a lot of people tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Caleb. My son is in second grade at Inlet View this year. And if you do the math, you'll realize that he started kindergarten at the height of the COVID pandemic. During that trying time, his teacher at Inlet View, Ms. Vaya, demonstrated qualities that I have come to expect as standard from the Inlet View community. The compassion, acceptance, and strength in the face of adversity that is demonstrated by the Inlet View community every day cannot be understated. The students, teachers, parents, and neighbors come together every day to face new challenges. I tell you this because I want it to be clear how much of a tragedy it would be if this community were to be lost. And that is exactly what we are talking about today. The school building is too old, too small, and has many more issues that have all been covered by other speakers tonight. If it's not replaced, it will continue to deteriorate. And the community that has grown around the school over the last 65 years will be lost forever. I urge you to vote for fund the construction on the new Inlet View building and help keep this community together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Next, we have Celeste Groudon and followed by Dupree Wallace, our final. Dupree Wallace. Ms. Groudon, can you looks like we lost her. Let's see, Mr. Dupree Wallace. All right, that ends our public testimony, our public comment period. The board will be in recess for 10 minutes. And I do want to, the Spanish immersion families, just so you know, there's nothing on the agenda tonight for Spanish immersion. The board has made no decision on Spanish immersion. We have only received research. 10-minute recess. Oh, Test. We'll come back to order in about 30 seconds. Okay. It is 8:20. We are back in order. On our agenda, we are at item E, consent agenda.
Madam President, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
Moved in second to approve the consent agenda consisting of our regular session minutes, memorandum number 33, personnel report, contract modification amendment, and acceptance of grant award. It's been moved in second to accept those items. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Any opposition? Seeing none. The consent agenda is approved. Do I still have Member Higgins? Yes. Okay. And that brings us to item F, action items.
Madam President, I move to approve ASD Memorandum number 024, the approval of budget revisions for FY 2022-2023. It is the administration's recommendation that the school board approve budget revisions and transfers for FY 2022 and 2023 as listed below. Second.
Moved in second to approve memorandum number 024. Is there any discussion?
Yep, Madam President, if I might.
Member Jacobs.
Yep, thank you. I am going to move that we substitute the administration's memo number 024 with the Finance Committee's proposed memorandum number 024S.
Second. Moved in second to substitute memorandum number 024 with memorandum number 024S, which is a substitute memo from the Finance Committee. Is there a second? Yeah, Member Lesson second. Is there any discussion?
Madam
On
President,
substituting?
I just wanted to clarify the intention is to use the appropriate Robert's Rules mechanism to replace the publicly noticed Finance Committee substitute with the administration's original version. So this has been noticed for multiple meetings.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? Questions? Member Lessons?
I support the adoption of this substitute, but I'd like to make an amendment.
We have to accept it first. We have to hold your amendment. All right, so it's been moved, and so we are right now at it's substituting memorandum number 024 with 024S. Seeing no other discussion, any opposition to substituting the memo?
I had a question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
My hands. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Do we have a copy of that? Was that presented?
Yes, it was attached to the actual document.
It's the attached one. Okay.
Yeah, it's at the very bottom, sir.
I didn't know if that was the case or not. Thank you.
That was it. And I can see if we can get someone to send you a copy if you can't find yours. Thank you.
Then, Madam President, if I might.
Yes.
One last motion now that we've substituted.
Well, we haven't voted on the substitute yet.
Oh, understood.
Is there any opposition to the substitute memo? Seeing none, memorandum number 024 has been substituted with memorandum number 024S. So now, member, I don't know who was first. Member Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I'm going to move to divide the question and to bifurcate the remaining funds that, and I'll get the exact total, were listed as future capital projects, which I believe is $37,712, $37,712,912. And to separate that from the remaining, of the bulk of the memorandum. And if I can get a second, I can speak to it.
Second. Moved in second to bifurcate or separate parts of the memo. Can you speak to the parts that should be separated, please?
Yes, Madam President. So there's broad consensus on the board that started with Member Lessons and I collaborating and sending a memorandum that was drafted and then reviewed in the Finance Committee meeting. That a memorandum was then modified in Finance and then sent to the full board. There has been little debate or opposition in Finance and otherwise to everything but the 37,712,912. And so my intention is to get the board's approval to approve all those expenses that we agree on so we can have a full conversation on the remainder. Thank you.
Yes, Member Lessons.
I will support that, but I want to make, I think, a point of order. And may I make a second motion at this time before we bifurcate?
Yeah, you can. Let's see. Wait, we haven't.
No.
We have. Hold on. Yeah, you have to. You want to amend the bifurcation, or tell me what you want. What you want.
I want to make a slight amendment to the body of the substitute before any bifurcation happens.
That's a separate motion. Okay, so you're going to have to hold on that. Okay, we're waiting for. Okay. Can you just? We need to separate out the. Did I get a second on the bifurcation? I think who was the second? Okay, Member Wilson. Okay, thank you. We just need I want to see the language before we proceed. We'll take a brief at ease.
Talk to you anything more here in terms of the department's investigation and what Trump is trying to do.
Can we read them into the record? We take that out.
So Trump is trying partially to roll back what the court did and issue the government to continue with its investigation in this area.
So right now we're doing, we are separating the memo 24S to the allocations that we finalized in our Finance Committee. And that would be everything except for the 37.7 mil. That is correct. We just need to let our assistants make sure they get the language right. And we will do a voice vote. The motion before you is to bifurcate or separate out the $37.7 million to the ASD Capital Projects Fund to be further allocated following board passage of the FY24 budget toward future large-scale capital projects which prioritize student, staff, and community safety. That comes out. So a yes vote is to remove that. Are we ready to vote? I'm calling for the vote.
Student Representative Shaw?
Yes.
Member Wilson?
Yes.
Member Higgins?
Member Higgins, we need a vote?
Yes.
Member Donley?
Yes.
Member Holloman?
Yes.
Member Jacobs?
Yes.
Member Lessons?
Yes.
And President Bellamy?
Yes. So that motion passes, 7 yeas, 0 nays. That brings us back to the rest of the memo. We need a motion. Member Jacobs.
Also, Madam President, my understanding is that everything but that 37.7 million is now before us.
It's right. Yep. That is correct.
And so I do have one amendment to the current memorandum 024S now as substituted. I would like to move my amendment number 1, which I think our board secretary has.
Can you read it for the record?
Yes. And so it would replace on the last page of the memorandum, finally, the board expects to receive the following guidance to inform discussion of future school bond propositions, with the understanding that the board will offer taxpayer relief by not running a bond in 2023, with finally the following adoption of this substitute memorandum, the board expects to receive the following guidance to inform discussion of future school bond propositions.
Okay.
And I can speak if we, to my motion, if we get a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second to change the language as indicated. We'll put that language up in just a minute.
And then if I might speak to it in the meantime, Madam President.
Yes, you may.
The intention with this is just to revert the memorandum back to the language that was sent to the Finance Committee meeting earlier, I guess it was last month. The memorandum as written and submitted to the Finance Committee provided flexibility for this board to consider a 2023 bond proposition as well as a 2024 bond proposition. That flexibility was taken out in the Finance Committee meeting, and it's something I respectfully disagree with. And so I think while we consider our full suite of options to address our looming capital needs, which exceed $800 million, as well as our fiscal cliff, that's a tool that should be in our toolbox. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I will support this amendment. That was, as Member Jacobs stated, the intent of the memo coming into finance clarified that there would be some flexibility in that language. And that was a miscommunication when I took notes from the Finance Committee to bring to this board. So I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you. So the amendment, any other discussion before we vote? The amendment before you is to replace the language as follows. The new language would read, finally, the following adoption of this substitute memorandum. The board expects to receive the following guidance to inform discussion of future school bond propositions. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Student Representative Shaw?
Yes.
Member Higgins?
Yes.
Member Jacobs?
Yes.
Member Holloman?
Yes.
Member Lessons?
Yes.
Member Wilson?
Yes.
Member Donley?
Yes.
President Bellamy?
Yes. And that passes unanimously. And I just realized that we had one person signed up to testify on this, and I need to pause and let that person testify. Mr. Angst, are you in the audience? Yeah, I need a motion to suspend the rules because I absolutely just looked down at my list. Most people did their testimony during the public comment.
Madam President, I move to suspend the rules to allow our action item public testimony to be finished.
Thank you. Moved in second. It's to allow our one person here to to testify. It was my own mistake. Sorry. I apologize. Seeing no questions or opposition, Mr. Angst.
Thank you, President Bellamy. My name is Corey Aist, and I'm president of the Anchorage Education Association and teacher. I have listened all evening to the testimony, and I am in support of Inlet View getting a replacement school. I am cautious that, when I was listening to your work session and all the proposed cuts, whether that be staffing cuts or cuts to facility closures or program eliminations, all three of those are really going to have detrimental impacts on student outcomes. Student outcomes, everybody who was here giving testimony, I really wonder if they were listening to the work session that took place before. And I'm really curious what is going to be offered on October 18th. The $37 million could absolutely be utilized to replace Inlet View, and potentially it should be. The question is, should it be put aside until we know what will the impact be to the entirety of the school district and our students and families until the 18th? You have a really hard decision ahead of you. Inlet View deserves to be replaced. The question is, are we going to close schools to do that? How many schools? Are we going to cut sports activities? Are we going to cut staffing to do it? I don't have those answers, but I want to see the proposals on the 18th first. This money is not being spent. It's just being put aside until we have the enormity. We can see the enormity of the situation. I encourage everyone who gave testimony and everyone who supports Inlet View to go watch the work session and what was shared. I also want to refer back to Dr. Bryant's sharing of our test scores. We have a real crisis. We have a real crisis, and this money could be used to help. We won't know until the 18th. That's where I'm at. I think that a majority of our community would also like to see what will be proposed on the 18th before we allocate the funds to Inlet View. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that brings us back to, okay, we have bifurcated the memo into two different distinct pieces. We have amended the one piece. We are now at accepting we are at the discussion on the bigger amount. All right, so what is the will of the body? Somebody.
Madam President, I can speak if you'd like. If we're so, I think we're at a discussion point regarding.
Yes, we are discussing.
So I just wanted to first say that I appreciate the collaboration that started with this process, first with administration, then between myself and Member Lessons drafting a memorandum that allowed our Finance Committee meeting to act as a kind of a decision point, a juncture for the board to get us to tonight. This memorandum does a lot. It addresses critical capital improvement needs. It addresses the 26,000 minor maintenance item backlog that it's a backlog that's been increasing over recent years. It reduces our impending fiscal cliff by 16 million. It also allows for future flexibility with 9.5 million in one-time capital costs. And then we certainly can have a conversation regarding the remaining 37.7 million. the community input on this has been critical and important. And I think that these items present a consent agenda of sorts, of projects that this board agrees on, that our community would support, that represent wise fiscal policy and investing in our buildings that need those critical safety and security repairs to prevent further damage to them. And so I fully support this portion of the memorandum, and I'm asking the rest of the board to do the same. Thank you.
Member Lessons, did you have comments?
I'll be brief. I will vote to support this larger allocation of the majority of the funds. I think it serves the district as a whole. It allows us to move forward. I've really appreciated the positive, constructive board conversation through finance, certainly my conversations with Member Jacobs ahead of all of this. And I think that this is a path towards dealing with and remediating some of the most pressing needs, which will create safer, more resilient learning spaces for students.
Okay. Yes, Member Holloman.
Yeah. I also want to support this, and part of it goes, I think a lot of times the public doesn't fully understand the mechanics and everything that happens in the background. But one of the detrimental things, unfortunately, is when we pass a bond in the spring, often those projects don't happen that summer because there simply isn't time from the time we hold our municipal election to the construction season for all that to happen. So when we have a series of bonds that pass, often the construction that's happening in a given summer is from bonds over a year old that were wet and went through the purchasing process and all of that good stuff. Because we had a bond that failed in the spring, if we wait to schedule these projects until a bond passes, we introduce a huge amount of uncertainty into the situation. And I think it's fairly safe to say that uncertainty comes with a cost in dollars. So this does, in essence, through the effort of our legislators, allow us to put forward a capital projects improvement list, know that it's going to happen because it's being passed in October, and the purchasing office will do what they can during the school year, and of course, what contracts for the summer for a lot of the work that can't be done while school is in session. So this is step one, and then step two, we can get into details on something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Holloman. Member Higgins.
Thank you. This has been kind of a complex issue to me because I'm looking at it from the standpoint of some advantages, disadvantages. Could we be using this money? At one point, the administration asked to delay it for academic outcomes to change things effectively. I see this as an alternative to having a bond in the spring. And a bond in the spring, by the way, will, I'm sure, be higher interest rates than our existing bonds. So by doing it now, we're better off than, using what we've got right now to do the same bond without bonding it versus higher interest rates. I wouldn't want to be paying off lower interest rate bonds anyway, from a practical standpoint. And these are things that have to be done. It's not, if it was a choice between this and something else that was critical for academics, but I realize this is going to have an impact as well. We're either going to keep the school or we aren't, and I believe we need to keep it. So the funding here to me is logical. It's reducing tremendously the amount of deferred maintenance because that school had a lot of it. And we have been basically going up in deferred maintenance costs constantly because of the fact that we've had less bonds that we have been, putting in front of the public. And so that's an issue given inflationary factors and all. So I think it's good for the community. I support it. I didn't support the idea of funding it halfway. I think this is a logical move, and I appreciate everybody that came out and spoke, and from both sides on that issue, because we've had some opposed and some in favor. I think it's best for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Higgins. Member Donnelly hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Madam President. I just also wanted to mention that this proposal includes over $7 million in secure vestibules and security upgrades for our schools, which was my top priority, and I believe had overwhelming public support in the bond proposition that we put forward. Of all the things there, our polling showed that was the top priority for the public. We have to, I feel very strongly, Madam President, that we need to secure our schools from external violent threats. We need to harden these schools, and this money will do that.
Thank you, sir. Member Wilson.
I won't reiterate the many things that I agree with that folks have said, that other members have said, but I will reiterate that I do support the allocation of this money to many of the urgent capital improvement needs, to the backlog that Member Jacobs referred to. So I will vote in support of this.
Thank you. Member, you got your mic on. Did you want to talk? No?
I've said enough.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? Seeing none, call for the vote. The motion before you reads, substitute main motion as amended. It is a recommendation of the Anchorage School Board Finance Committee that the board approves the substitute memo number 024S, budget revisions and transfers for 22-23 as outlined in the memorandum.
Student Representative Shaw,
Yes.
Member Holloman,
Yes.
Member Lessons,
Yes.
Member Jacobs,
Yes.
Member Donnelly,
Yes.
Member Higgins,
Yes.
Member Wilson,
Yes.
President Bellamy.
Yes. And that motion passes 7-0. So now that brings us to the bifurcated. Do we need to give it a number tonight, or we don't need to give it a number tonight? For what we pulled out 30, the piece that's still dangling is the 37 million.
This is still part of the original motion. It's just we're voting on it in two pieces.
In two pieces. Is that the will of the board? Okay, thank you. That will work for me too.
Maybe
So now-
maybe it could be designated Part A, which we just voted on, and
And part B. Okay. Are you good, Katie and Amanda? Okay. So we are now at, and I think that's where Member Lessons had an amendment. Yes.
Yes. I move to amend the wording for the item currently noted as $37,712,912 to the ASD Capital Projects Fund to read as follows. $37,712,912 to 1, the ASD Capital Projects Fund to fund rebuilding Inlet View Elementary School as approved by the Urban Design Commission on September 14th, 2022, and with the intent to commence construction in spring 2023, less the $2.5 million of project costs detailed below, which shall be deferred until after the FY24 budget is passed. I just emailed Amanda all of this.
Okay.
Abatement and demo of existing building, $630,000. Flagpoles, $10,000. Athletic equipment and playground equipment, $700,000. Site furnishings, $18,000. Paving, $180,000. Sidewalk, curb and gutter, $450,000. Fences and gates, $115,000. Landscaping, $400,000. This sizable but incomplete allocation is made with the understanding that initiating project work as soon as possible, especially materials, pricing, and subcontracting, will promote the district's maximum value for its investment. And 2, the remainder to the general fund, where following board passage of the FY24 budget and board receipt of updated IVES costs, as well as administrative guidance,
the board shall further reallocate remaining funds to the completion of the Inlet View rebuild and or in service of board goals and guardrails.
Second.
Moved in second to substitute language in with the 37.7 mil. Moved by member Lesson, second by member Solomon. Discussion.
May I speak to the motion?
Yes, you may.
Okay. In making this amendment to the adopted substitute, I want to go on the record that I see incorporating Inlet View into the larger, well, I guess bifurcated allocation now as ASD's best path forward as a district, freezing one-time funds for one-time expenses. Why? Well, I think as member Jacobs noted, the larger body that we're allocating does so much for students district-wide. But really in getting Inlet View Elementary School, a sizable but critical and long-delayed project for the future of Anchorage as a whole, off the CIP, that's our capital improvement plan, thank you, which will in turn enable the district to prepare future bonds for taxpayer approval that can address millions of dollars in deferred maintenance. And by encouraging the earliest contract work and pricing, we can really allocate remaining funds to critical areas of student learning. I've heard the argument that funding one school with a large portion of these funds will leave ASD inflexible to new and emerging needs between now and February or March, and that we don't yet know what we don't know. But to the question of those uncertain needs, I remind everyone here that the substitute memo language calls for those funds to be allocated towards capital needs, not after the FY24 budget is passed, not before then, and not to deal with the legislature's inaction on operating funds, which I'll get to. I also want to share that the discomfort that some board members may feel about allocating these funds to one school rebuild while we await information about likely school closures is understandable, but it's a vestige of the district having kicked the can down the road before. And as we heard in the work session this afternoon, uncomfortable conversations are going to persist for the next 36 months or more. But unlike a year ago, when Inlet View was removed from the bond timeline and school closures was seen as untimely, given the stresses experienced by school staff, we now hold the funds to take action in a way that will lead to the lowest possible project costs, really from any point now moving forward. According to the contractor for this project, if funded immediately, we will bid some subcontractor and supplier packages this fall, as opposed to next spring, at a time when we will enjoy the most interest in the project and the highest number of bids. We will lock in material prices this fall before they escalate, and we can get materials headed our way this winter and spring. And lastly, we will get a head start on next year's summer construction season by using the fall and winter months to plan the work and break ground in April. So yes, in making this amendment, I recognize we're going to have hard conversations about the district's operating costs and structures in the coming weeks. And I recognize right now that I might not be able to count to 4. Not all board members may be comfortable taking action at this time. But I really want to make a distinction between our operating budgets and our tangible things that we can do with our capital projects. And I think if we look at the question of pupil to teacher, the PTR, the pupil-teacher ratio, this is a really good case in point. It came up at a previous work session, right? So if we allocated $32 million of these funds to only increase our PTR by 5 in FY23, as slides in a previous work session suggested we would be offsetting less than half of next year's deficit. And then the money would be gone with nothing permanent to show for it. Now, I believe in low PTRs, but the problem is that I don't want it to go poof. So the bigger problem I see with allocating one-time funds for PTR would really be that the pressure then becomes off of legislators and candidates for legislative office right now to solve this problem of underfunding, adequate funding really, in a timely way. So it's in this context, thinking about operating funds, thinking about capital projects, that I think we have the chance for parents, caregivers, students, educators, everyone gathered here tonight, to understand that our fiscal cliff is here now, and it has been here for years. We allocated more than $1.5 million in federal relief funds towards teachers in FY21, $25 million in federal relief funds in FY22, and more than $56 million in this fiscal year to backfill our budgets to pay for our teachers. The cliff is here right now. We are just using money to mask it. Perhaps we could have used, if we didn't have the cliff that we have, given years of inaction from the state, perhaps we could have used those federal relief funds for high impact tutoring and math and reading. But here we are backfilling our budgets for years now. So although the board has talked about buying time, we've been on a multi-year can kicking odyssey, and I don't think we can afford to do so anymore. So committing to using these funds for tangible, one-time capital and maintenance projects rather than extraordinarily worthy but ongoing operating funds type of work like PTR will help meet students' needs now for safe spaces to learn while helping the public understand the magnitude to which the state is shortchanging Anchorage. We are facing a BSA that hasn't been inflation-proof since this year's sixth graders were in kindergarten. And transportation funding hasn't changed since those kids were in preschool. We're also dealing with an antiquated district cost factor that hasn't been re-examined since 2004. I think that's before most of this year's high school seniors were born, just to put that in context. So I'm almost done. So I encourage everybody here tonight to consider that this conversation about allocating one-time funds to strategic one-time uses, to savings, to future maintenance needs, to thousands of backlogged minor projects, and to more than 19 major projects when we include Inlet View, might only produce a much-needed, long-delayed school in downtown Anchorage, but could also help empower families to ask candidates statewide right now how they stand on everything that funds our ongoing operational needs. The BSA, the district cost factor, transportation, defined benefits, and the statutory deadlines, frankly, in May of 2023 for when ASD would have to impose a reduction in force. So I urge fellow board members, as uncomfortable as this decision might be, to seriously consider passing this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lessons. Any other comments?
Yep, Madam President, if I might.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
Member Jacobs.
Yeah, I'd move to postpone the this item until our December 5th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can you
speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So I'll start just with some initial comments. I don't have a speech prepared as Member Lessons does, but that also means I'll be quicker. I also don't need to repeat much of what was said, in that we at this table all agree our problems are that the legislature has failed to increase the BSA to adjust with inflation. A school bond moratorium was implemented in 2015, which has caused our deferred maintenance backlog to spike. We failed to correct a formula, the foundation formula that was instituted 20 years ago, to account for the fact that Anchorage likely isn't the cheapest place to provide K-12 education in our state. And even a regular review, as Member Donnelly has pointed out over and over, which was assumed to be part of the process, just hasn't been done. And so our legislature has work to do. And we have decisions to make based on the fact that we have roughly 80% of the spending power that we did today than we did in 2017. The decision before us today isn't to support, in my mind, isn't to support or not support Inlet View. It's, do we want to hear from the voices of the students and families at the 18 schools where we aren't serving hot lunch because we don't have a cafeteria manager, and we're serving shelf-stable meals instead? Do we want to hear from the families of the 30 elementary schools where we don't have a school counselor to provide critical mental health services? Do we want to hear from families and stakeholders who have been affected by our transportation struggles because we pay substandard rates for our bus drivers, and as in their current contract, they don't receive a wage increase for years after being hired? Do we want to address portions of our $824 million deferred maintenance backlog? We have work to do to listen to the community, to listen to staff, to listen to parents. We've had great representation from the Inlet View community. It's been my honor to sit through a couple dozen hours of meetings now. I was proud to sit with folks in the area while the Urban Design Commission passed the project. It was long overdue. I don't think that there's a single board member on the dais who has expressed that Inlet View doesn't need some major capital attention in some form or another. We all agree that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. And I think that this board, I truly believe this board will be the board to do it. But there are so many unknowns, and our ultimate charge as individuals who have a fiduciary responsibility to taxpayers to utilize this tax payer funding that was school bond debt reimbursement going back 5 years now, is to do so with all the information and all the facts in front of us. And so I would ask the board to consider further conversation in the months to come. Will we look to envision how we can utilize a FY23 bond and a thorough community and stakeholder communication process to better inform our plan for how we utilize the funding that we have, given the uncertainty coming from Juneau. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jacobs. Yes, Member Holloman.
Thank you. Unfortunately, in this case, to vote to delay is essentially to vote no on the amendment, because it is a time-sensitive issue. And this is a situation, as Member Lessons pointed out, that we don't normally find ourselves in. We normally put a bond package up. We see what the public does. And while the public may not think about it all this much, we've all become aware that if a bond package fails, it doesn't mean that the boilers are okay for another year and the roof stopped leaking. The need is still there. It's unaffected by the vote. It simply means we can't use bonds as a way to solve that problem. And I do want to make clear, the money we're talking about has nothing to do with COVID, has nothing to do with federal funding. It is unique one-time funding from the state. And I'm going to say unique, and to my knowledge, it's never been done before. That, and of course, canceling bond debt reimbursement had never been done before. So reimbursing us for the canceled bond debt reimbursement is truly a unique situation. We don't normally get to decide whether to go forward with a large capital improvement project. We only get to decide what to put to voters for approval. If we don't start Inlet View tonight, we don't know when it will get built. We don't know for sure if we'll have a bond package in the spring. So 2024 might be the earliest it would come before voters again, which would make 2026 the earliest we would break ground to start the replacement. We're talking about a school that sits in the heart of a neighborhood that we don't have to provide a lot of transportation for, despite its mixed demographics. It's a very high-performing school. It's a school of choice by a lot of people. And frankly, the conditions that are described are embarrassing to a city that has resources, in a state that has resources. I think most of us understand how we got there. It was a building that was built a long time ago. Clark was built a long time ago, and it took a long time for us to get around to replacing it, because as the city grew, we were building new schools in other places, out in Eagle River, out in South Anchorage. And that kept us from going back and renovating some of these schools that really have serious issues. The legislature, after a failure of a bond, the legislature put in our hands the ability to fix this. The one part that keeps coming back to me as a board member is when we make a decision, one, what are we doing for kids or two kids? And two, what are we doing to future boards? Future boards are going to wrestle with program cuts and a lack of funding. In the 25 years I've been paying reasonably close attention, I think there have been like 4 years where cuts to the budget weren't imminent, where there wasn't a perceived funding crisis. And sometimes things came through at the end and sometimes they didn't. We're going to have that. The next board is going to have that. The question is, will they also have the problem of trying to get Inlet View to pass on a bond? And if we say no tonight, they will. And it's 2025 or 2026 at the earliest before they put a shovel in the ground to replace it. I do see it as a risk. We possibly are going to be looking at cutting programs that are important to our folks and to our kids and to what I think is the greatness of our district. But at the same time, we can't let this go on for more and more and more years. So I would urge a vote no on the delay. I would urge a vote yes on the amendment. Thank you.
Any other board comments, board member comments? Member Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam President. As Member Lessons brought up how to get a response from the legislature on these issues. Well, I think it's really important, number one, that we fully develop our chief financial officer's analysis of the actual cost, relative cost of delivering education by this school district versus the national standards. I don't think that's ever been really appropriately articulated and developed before, and I think we're on the cusp of having that data, and I think that's going to be really important in that effort. And second, from a conservative point of view, I think that if we offer accountability, we develop a package of saying, if you give us this assistance, this is what we will do to be accountable for it. That's what I would like to see this board work towards proposing and being able to offer to our legislative elected leaders to help influence their willingness to invest further in education.
Any other comments? Yes, Member Wilson.
So I've spent time at Inlet View. I've enjoyed my time at Inlet View. I really appreciate the commitment of the staff, the families. I'm sorry. The energy of the students. Is that better? Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed that. And I absolutely recognize that Inlet View needs a new school. I advocated for Inlet View to go on the bond. But where I'm at today is I really believe it's my responsibility to make the best decision based on all of the information. I can't imagine any of our teachers wouldn't say that to their students. All that information on how the district will be affected by our $68 million fiscal cliff coming. I don't have that information today. And I cannot in good conscience advocate $37 million to be advocated to replace Inlet View today without having all of that information laid out. I don't have the information. And I don't think it would be fiscally responsible of me to vote to allocate that money to Inlet View without having that information.
Thank you, Member Wilson. The motion before you is for to postpone the bifurcated wording of Memorandum 024S to December 5th, the December 5th meeting. That was moved by Member Jacobs, second by Member Wilson. Seeing no other comments or hands, we'll ask for the vote.
Student Representative Shaw.
Yes.
Member Jacobs.
Yes.
Member Lessons.
No.
Member Wilson.
Yes.
Member Donnelly.
Yes.
Member Higgins.
No.
Member Holloman.
No.
President Bellamy.
Yes. And that motion passes 4 yeas to 3 nays. Okay, I think that takes care of memorandum number 24 for right now, or 24S. We're moving back to our agenda. We are now on item G, non-action items. Those items will come back before you on the 18th of November. We have a few people for public. Did we have other people for the last part of the evening comment? Do we know which ones? Oh, I see. So we had a couple of people who signed up to, I think we have, they weren't here. Terry Davenport, I think. Monica Rodriguez, Maria Rodriguez, Ashley Unst. I think it's UST, Ashley. Not seeing any of them. Okay. That brings us to item I, Superintendent's update.
Sure. Good evening, board. Thank you, Madam President. We've had quite the lively discussion tonight, so I'll go ahead and abridge my remarks. But I did just want to reiterate that I'm really excited to continue these academic discussions, and looking into October 15th, I anticipate we'll have some great, robust dialogue around what we can do to achieve our ambitious goals to achieve reading proficiency. So I truly do look forward to that. And I just want to note that one aspect of addressing reading proficiency that we didn't talk about was tackling this issue of chronic absenteeism. And I'm pleased to say that we're still holding strong at 90.8% attendance. I think that's going to pay huge dividends. And we're just thankful for everybody that has done whatever it takes to get our students to school despite the busing challenges. And then I'll go ahead and close just with a couple of updates. In terms of transportation, the extension of the tourism industry certainly is holding us back from reaching our full staffing levels when it comes to bus drivers. So there are still tourism buses out there in Seward and elsewhere that have kept us from being fully staffed. But this will be the month that we start to see some steady progress. So for example, this Friday on the 7th, we'll have 8 additional drivers behind the wheel. We do have 27 drivers in training, 11 more being interviewed. So we're still making progress, but hiring drivers is still the utmost priority. We've spoken enough about budget tonight, I think, but I just wanted to reiterate that our community has a lot of power when it comes to asking their elected officials and candidates where they stand when it comes to education funding, because that's why we're here. And we're doing our part as a team to ensure that our legislators are educated and understand the realities of school funding. As we all know at this table, the turnover rate amongst our legislatures is going to be pretty high. And therefore, if you're a new legislator joining the House or the Senate, you have a lot to learn, not just about school finance, but a lot of stuff. So we're going to make sure that they're all set when it comes to the school finance piece. And then lastly, I'll just close with, it was a real pleasure to connect with my superintendent colleagues in Homer this past weekend. There's been turnover across the board at both the teacher level, the principal level here in ASD, and also at the superintendent level in Alaska. I think there's well over a dozen new superintendents across the state, but it was really nice for all of us to get together, and each one of us shared, things that we think are going well in our districts and things that are challenges. And even though ASD is so different than the other 50 or so districts in the state, I would say that we're all going through very common challenges. And that does give me a sense of hope when it comes to uniting as colleagues to advocate for sensible education policy, particularly around school finance. So I'll just go ahead and leave it at that. That's my report.
Any questions for the superintendent? Thank you, Dr. Bryant. Yes.
One quick one. Is there a date that we still expect to have full bus service again?
I don't have a specific date because we still need more people in the applicant pool is the short of it. So we urgently need people to apply to be bus drivers, and we'll do whatever we can to attract those folks to apply.
Thank you. Other questions? Member Dunley.
I might have started bringing this up at our last meeting, but I really would like the consideration of whether we need to amend our school calendar to address the bus driver situation. If we could pick up more drivers by starting a week later and trying to help parents out with, more bus service, I think it's certainly worth at least looking at and consideration.
Absolutely. So I anticipate in the coming months, we'll be talking about both school start date and also school start times, because those both contribute potentially in a positive way to the transportation issue.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Seeing no other questions, we are at school, item J, school board and administration comments. Let's start to my right today. Any comments? Feel free to pass.
No, I've got hours there too. It is unfortunate that a lot of the folks here for the immersion programs tonight have left. I did want to emphasize that it's not that they've been selected or targeted. It's simply that our chief financial officer is costing out as many programs as he can differentiate. And the elementary orchestra and the immersion programs were the first two examples, but it in no way suggests that they are most likely to go. And in talking with some folks earlier tonight, I emphasized that when you look at the marginal cost of the immersion program versus the benefit of it really is an argument for continuing it. There is a cost, but it's not huge. What a lot of people in this community don't understand, and I'll say as someone that retired after 20 some years from the district, I knew the immersion programs existed. I kind of knew what they did, but until I actually went to some of the ceremonies, did not understand the connection that immersion families have with the Anchorage School District or with each other or with their school. It affects where in Anchorage they live. And there were several people that I've talked to over the past couple of years that made it clear they were staying in Anchorage until their child completed this, even though these were people that had options to go live and work anywhere. So the impact of the immersion programs is rather huge. One of the other speakers suggested we need to advocate for more funds rather than simply making cuts. And a few people on the board have been doing that for a very long time. I would hope the immersion parents would speak up when people are attacking the school district. And they are, not because of the immersion program, but they just simply say, we're not teaching anyone to read or do math. Kids are coming out without the skills they need. Those are the moments where people that really feel like overall the district's doing a great job need to raise their voice. We have a certain amount of legitimacy with some people, but not a lot. When folks from the community stand up and go, no, my child's in the 6th grade and here's some rather remarkable things that have happened already. And here's why we want these programs to continue. It has a huge impact, especially if you engage candidates knocking on your door. Candidates knocking on your door are emotionally vulnerable because it's exhausting work. And if you are on the wrong side of an issue and it's your 7th door and someone's telling you why you're wrong, it has an impact. And I hope parents will remember that. Certainly if you have issues with the district, we want to hear about that too. We're not asking everybody to simply be uncritical, but we need for that message to come out from the people that feel strongly. People that came here tonight to tell us how important that program is. We want to keep it. We recognize it's unique in the country to have this many programs like that are so successful. We want to keep it going. We want all of our buildings to be clean, warm, dry, safe. And periodically, unfortunately, that takes a big chunk of money as well. So I hope people will make their feelings known and help us solve these problems in a positive way. And a real thanks to everybody that took time to come out tonight. It's not fun, and it does show how passionate people are about it.
Thank you. Member Lessons.
I spoke a lot earlier, so I'll be brief. But I wanted to share the thing that really caught my eye in this quick presentation of data is last year's first grade teachers. You brought us our first graders, kids like my now second grader, who was a first grader, who started school online in the pandemic, from 38.5% proficiency to 48.6 proficiency. That is a lot of growth. So first grade teachers, good job. I see that. And working with first graders, as everybody may know, or maybe not, they are squirrely.
Oh, girl.
They need incentives in there. They need to want it.
Okay. Yeah.
So I find that really impressive. And I just wanted to update the board on maybe one or two other things. President Bellamy and I continue to attend the Edgeonomics training sessions, and I think maybe we can bring some kind of a summary presentation after our last one. And the ad hoc wellness committee persevered, and we have completed an initial review of where we think we might end up. But we are meeting again tomorrow, and I hope to use a wellness. It's called a WellSat tool to compare what we think we have with what we need to have. So I'll leave it at that.
And when do you think that's going to be ready for governance?
I think the process is going to be, let's make sure that we have everything that we need to have as robustly as it should be. We'd like to find, and we're going to talk to communications. I see you. And we're going to figure out how we can incorporate stakeholder feedback. So maybe through a variety of mechanisms we've got parents coming into school. So maybe we can get some posters up with QR codes, so they can tell us what they think about our draft document, surveys, or focus groups. We're kind of working through the nuts and bolts there. So hopefully governance not too long from now.
Okay. I look forward to seeing the final project. I've been in and out of the meetings. So anyway, thank you. Member Wilson.
So I also appreciate all of the students, community members, and staff that testified and took the time out of their busy schedule to attend this evening. I do want to recognize one particular person who testified because she said she has been an ASD bus driver for 18 years. So I wanted to say bravo, but I know we're not supposed to clap when she was testifying about that. So I thought I'd save it for the end. Also wanted to share that ASD Connect will be published on Friday, and it will include new information about our fiscal year 24 budget solutions and a synopsis of today's work session in case you missed it. There will also be new information about rotating bus routes and schedules, including hiring and training status. If you haven't heard of ASD Connect or have not signed up, you can go to our ASD webpage to sign up and continue to get that information. It's also Bullying Prevention Month, and several schools are participating. I wanted to throw out an example of the Handshoe Hawks are producing a video, so I look forward to seeing that. And congratulations to West High School for being named the 2022-23 Performing Arts School of Excellence. Also wanted to share that the next communication committee meeting is on October 27th at 11 a.m. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, Ms. Shaw, your comments?
So Member Wilson just stole what I was going to share about West. But their cheerleading team performed in the halftime of the UW and Stanford football game. So I saw that. I was like, that is so cool. So they performed with other high school cheerleading teams during the halftime performance. So I was going to say props to them for that and for the National Performing Arts School of Excellence. And I believe that's all I have.
Thank you. Member Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam President. There was a discussion at our quarterly meeting, it was like a week and a half ago or so, with the Anchorage Assembly of a unified effort to educate and advocate to convince our Anchorage legislators to support legislation to complete a new district cost differential study. It's long overdue. It would be an investment of less than $200,000 to bring state funding fairness to over 40,000 Anchorage students. That's less than $5 per student, and our Anchorage legislators need to get this done.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. Yes, Member Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to echo appreciation for those who came out to testify. I'm glad that we were able to facilitate one block to hear from everyone. I think this was the first hard conversation this year where we had some significant debate, and so definitely respect the members on the dais. It won't be the last, unfortunately. And so, yeah, definitely appreciate hearing from the community as we navigate these challenges. With all that said, I still think I would prefer our job to the gargantuan task in front of our education professionals in schools every day. So thank you to everyone making learning happen every day in our schools, and have a good night.
Thank you. Member Higgins.
Thank you. I'm going to start by thanking the students who were speaking tonight. We had more of them, and I think they're playing an active role in citizenship. I almost think we need to start sending letters of appreciation to everybody who does speak, who's a student. I know I've been to different Ivy League schools on just tours, and they always tell you they look at academics, but they don't. Not only they look for involvement in the community. So it's great to see students get engaged and to come to the board, I think. And maybe some recognition of that is really good. I like the public speaking, particularly when we link it always with academics. It's like saying students come first. And I think that's an important issue in everything that we're going to have to face. We've got a lot of cuts. We've got a lot of changes we need to make, but everything should be coached around the idea of academic outcomes for the kids. But whatever works best for them, we're going to have to make decisions. It'll be tough. I heard the part about the immersion program. I think about that one, and I remember attending some of the sessions with different programs, graduations, and there were discussions about the fact that basically coming out bilingual is like a career technology, but you get it's better paid than the other career technologies coming out. It's very beneficial. It's preparing kids for success, and it does so much stuff. So I think you're going to find strong support, but we have to wait till we get to the alternatives. Same thing with middle school. Not everybody on the board was here when discussions were made about middle school, and the public got so incensed they all started calling the legislators who didn't know what to do with all these phone calls, and they upped the BSA. So maybe discussing the issue of middle school for that reason alone is a good discussion in the workshop. But I don't want to make a decision based upon what other school districts do. I want to base it upon the outcome for our kids in this school district. That's it. I like to comment about revenue. We don't get out there and we don't push the revenue. I think we do, but I think it's important for the public to realize that the assembly is giving the maximum amount they can do. There were some cuts proposed by the mayor bit, and even then the assembly went to the maximum. It's based upon how much we get from the state. So lobbying the assembly, it's just not necessary. They're doing a great job with it. We have got to get the increase from the BSA. And the way that came about last time was the public got incensed. They really hit the legislators. We're in the middle of an election. If you want to make a difference, find out where the candidates stand on funding schools. Find out how important education is. This is the opportunity for the general public to really make a decision. Ask legislators what they've done in the past, ask what they're going to do in the future, and you're going to change things in the future. That happened with Greater Alaska Schools, became very active and very insistent, and they have a great deal more influence than just other elected officials, and I just really encourage that. And I just want to comment, I greatly appreciate the comments from former Commissioner of Administration, Eleanor Andrews. she has played the key role in me coming to Alaska in 1983. So I've known her for quite a while. And it's not easy. Just have to do the right thing. I appreciate that. I think it's very hard not to do the right thing, though, as well. And so we have tough decisions ahead. But public input, I greatly appreciate it. And I know we're going to get there at the end. So people are going to hear a lot of what ifs, and they're going to get active. I think that's important. Even ahead of when we are going to face the cuts, you're fighting for your kids' education. You're fighting for what you think is best. I don't think there's an early time to do that. All times are active. All times are appropriate. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Higgins. So I just have a couple of comments. I'm just looking at the young men on the front row. You guys waiting for a signature? No? Oh, great. You're just hanging out. I love it. Fabulous. Oh, so cool. That's fabulous. Thank you. So a couple of Member Jacobs will be chairing our next meeting, the meeting in October. So please be patient with him. That will also be his first conversation, his first monitoring conversation that he will facilitate, but he will do just fabulous. I will be attending a conference, I think in Orlando, if it's open, or you know, if it's still there. Yeah. I did hear a couple of things. You know, the Spanish immersion, I have been responding to emails profusely because I didn't want people to worry, and apparently I didn't respond to enough. But we are in the discussion and research phase of budget development. We have not, I repeat, we have not recommended any changes to any program or service at this point. We are just painting a mosaic of what this district looks like to its core. And it's a tough process to endure, but we have not recommended. We're simply trying to understand and look at not just what we're doing and how much it costs, but to just reimagine how we might do it differently. And that does take some conversation. We are working on almost every email that comes back to me. Parents want to know, well, what can I do? What can I do? And so we are working on a legislative advocacy plan. We are really working the communication department really, really hard. Tough. It's hard. It's hard work. But in addition to everything else they have to do, we are asking them to work with us on setting up a plan where people can get navigated to where they need to be. Not that any from a neutral position. We're not telling them what to say. But there is power when people speak up, not just to us, but to those who make the laws and who allocate the money. It is very important that you tell what you value, what it means to you in a proactive way. Right now, we are vulnerable. We've got to cut $68 million, and we've got to, but we also owe it to every single kid in this district to give them the best education possible. So, and how are we going to do it? It's going to be tough, but I do believe, I agree with Member Higgins. We will make it through. And the Inlet View community has been, they have been advocates for years. I mean, I know that feeling. I know that hopefulness and then the letdown. It took 15 years or more to get Wendler renovated. I had the privilege of being the principal at Wendler during those years, and the letdown from the delays and the bonds not passing and getting moved down on the list, getting moved off the list, then getting back on the list. So I know that feeling. I know that stress. But I do believe in the end, we are going to make decisions, and we don't disagree. I don't disagree with building Inlet View. There are so many unknowns right now that I need to know more so that I can see my way through this. And I can only see through my lens, and I totally understand how parents and our students who are so courageous, I understand how they're feeling. I'm excited for the next monitoring conversation, even though I will be on attending virtually. So please send in your questions. And if you have resolutions for the Alaska School Board Association, we are running up against the deadline on that, and that has to be board approved. So if we do not, oh, it's midnight tonight. Oh, well, never mind. I won't be writing one. I won't have time. And with that, I agree with member Lessons on the edgeonomics. That is some powerful work. I still don't understand it all, but it is very enlightening for me, and it's helpful to me to understand all of the things that go into. I mean, different ways of thinking about value and students and outcomes. So I really appreciate that. So I look forward to bringing that back to the board as well. So Dr. Bryant, do you have anything?
No further comments. Thank you.
All right. Anybody in the gallery have any comments? Dr. Stock? Ms. Tieford? No? Okay. Everybody's, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved in second to adjourn. Seeing no comments or opposition, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.